Yes. What's going on, everybody? It's your Uncle Weezy here to break down all 14 fights on the UFC 301 card that is coming up this Saturday. It's going to be May 4th, 2024, headlined by Alexander Pantoja versus Steve Erceg for the flyweight championship of the world. It's going to be a great main event. It's going to be an interesting main card, not like best main card that we've ever seen on a pay-per-view, but it is in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. We've got the King of Rio returning for probably his last UFC fight ever, Jose Aldo, fighting against Jonathan Martinez. We got Anthony Smith going to be squaring off against Vitor Petrino. We got the return of Michel Pereira, who's going to be squaring off against Ihor Peterier. It's a pretty good main card. It'll be chock full of really exciting, fun fights. And it's going to be a great live crowd there because the Brazilians always bring it when they have their events there in Brazil. And it's going to be a packed arena. They're going to be loud. They're going to be raucous. They're going to be rooting for their home country fighters. And I'm looking forward to breaking down all 14 of these fights with you guys. Thank you for checking in live here on a Thursday afternoon edition of Just the Tip. It's been a weird week. You know, I did Stat Diggers like I always do on Pub Sports Radio on Sunday with my guy DFS by the Numbers. But then I also did the Die Hard MMA podcast with my guy Clint on the Home of Fight Network on Monday. And then I was working on finishing up the Patreon for the new tier, the probability tier, which is going to be after this week. We're going to be putting probability on the Patreon only for the Patreon subscribers. And it's going to be a subscriber-only show that includes all the data that I've accumulated over the last couple of years here as I've been building this database and getting the data from every single UFC fight from January 1st, 2013 on to today. So having all these benchmarks, having all the data, knowing what, you know, the averages for divisions are, and then building out all of the work that calculates DFS scores and calculates all the statistics in these spreadsheets. It's all finally done and ready to go. So check out patreon.com/Uncle Weezy, $25 a month for the probability tier with the and it's just going to be pay-per-view from now on. We do have probability this week for UFC 301. The link is in the description of this video. It's time-stamped. Brady and I did it. We went 2 hours breaking down all the plus EV bets that we could find for this card. So check out probability. And please, if you want to support the work that we're doing here, check out that Patreon, sign up, and you'll be part of the crew that gets to see probability going forward. I think it's one of the most innovative shows right now for MMA bettors and UFC bettors. And I think we're kind of breaking the mold in terms of what kind of information we're willing to give out on these publicly accessible shows. And I hope that you come along and join Brady and I for what I think is going to be a really fun journey into learning a lot about the mathematics behind gambling, a lot of the theory behind gambling, and how to optimize bets and take advantage of recency bias and mispriced lines in order to profit over the long term. So appreciate everybody that showed up live. I know we had like 400 live viewers between Twitter and YouTube last night for probability. So appreciate that. Check out that show. And let's get into this week, though. But quickly, let's break down last week. I will share my screen with you guys here. And last week up 0.9 units. You know, not a great week, not a bad week. You know, we'll take any positive weeks. It's a good thing. I think we've got 2 winning events in a row right now, but we got to stack a lot more than that. But losing bets, fight ends by sub for Means Medic for a quarter unit. Karina Silva wins in round 2 for 1 unit was a losing bet. I'd make that bet again, though. Jonathan Pierce by decision at plus 265 for 1 unit was a losing bet. Pierce wins in round 3, losing bet for a quarter unit. And then I had the Petrovic 2-3 props spread at plus 174. We hit that one for 1.74 units. And then I also had the Petrovic 2-3 KO props spread. And man, we were so close to hitting that for a half unit at plus 4. I think it was a little bit better than plus 400 on that spread that I created there. But you know, she was pounding her out at the end of round 2, ran out of time, and then wound up getting the submission in round 3 against Na Liang. So very close to having a much better day. That would have been, I think, a 2.75 unit swing if Petrovic had finished by knockout instead of submission in rounds 2 or 3. But we still got, you know, positive 0.9 units. Ryan Spann blew it, but I did not make him the ass shaving of the week. The ass shaving of the week was Jonata Janiz. He had a rough first round, but he came back and got it back in the second. Got a KO win for us there. The dog pick of the week was Dante Almez's money line. That cashes for us. The greasy 4-leg parlay hit 2 out of 4 legs. Jonathan Pierce's money line was close. And Spann we had his money line as well. He was looking great in round 1, and then he decided to stop wrestling and wound up getting knocked out in round 2. So, yeah, I mean, Spann's never been a what you would call a reliable guy, you know, but I just thought that the matchup was so good for him there that even he couldn't fuck that up. And boy, did he prove me wrong. But we also hit Nicolau Perez under 4.5 rounds very comfortably for 1 unit. We hit Victor Hendry versus Hanayaya. Fight doesn't go to decision for 1 unit as well. The Petrovic 2-3 props hit, and then the 1 unit parlay. Denise to win, Pierce Onama over 1.5 rounds. That hits for 1.17 units. So yeah, up 0.9 units. I've got some bets already. 4.25 units in tracked action for this week. I will share my tracked bets with you after we're done breaking down these fights later on. So let me get the stats up here. And this is the new probability package where you're going to get each fighter's, you know, complete UFC and pre-UFC statistics. I mean, obviously we don't have the statistics for significant strikes and stuff pre-UFC, but we get all of the offensive and defensive, you know, what they allow here, fight by fight for their UFC experience. And then this beautiful dashboard up here that has the DFS statistics, the offensive and grappling, offensive and defensive grappling, offensive and defensive significant striking, distance striking, clinch and ground striking, and all the record data. And you got that for both fighters in each fight. And then you've got the side-by-side matchup template, and you've got the over-under template, which gives you all of the necessary information to determine pricing for the over-under bets. And we got the divisional benchmarks. We have the implied probabilities of the lines. We have the combined performances in relation to each under or over bet. And we've got the sum of those 3 comparisons down here. And we've even got the pre-UFC action here in these lines. So a lot of great information in the over-under template. And then we also have the betting template, which you see right here, which gives you the same information that you have in the over-under template, but it's converted, and there's mathematical formulas in there to actually calculate each fighter's win condition in this adjusted win condition column here that's based on prior performance, how each fighter wins and how their opponent loses. You sum up that data and you can come up with, based on past performance, you know, a win condition going forward. And then you can look at the stylistic components of the fight to determine which props stick out for you that week and which ones, you know, don't make a lot of sense to bet because they're overpriced. So yeah, check out the Patreon. That's what we have going on here. And yeah, we're gonna start with Costa Borjas after we see what's going on with you guys in the chat here, as we've got my guy Olajuwon Dream is in the room saying, "Oi, what's up, Olajuwon?" He's saying fight doesn't go to decision for Brener Orolbai, -110 this morning. Feel like both guys have finishing upside. Neither guy's ever been finished, but both guys are savage finishers. So that's why you're seeing that line kind of like at a coin flip where the bookies are saying, dude, we don't know either. So you kind of got to go with your stylistic read there, you know? And I think both of those guys do have finishing upside. I just know that they're both extremely durable. So I think if the fight does end, it's probably going to be by a submission rather than a knockout. But still, that is going to be an absolute banger of a fight. And Orolbai has been to decision twice out of 14 fights, and Brener only 5 times out of 19 fights. So yeah, these guys are definitely people that don't go to decision often. We got Dix Insider in the room saying, Hola, Profeta Miguel. Oh, what is happening? He's saying, Prophet Weezy. I just heard in an iHorror interview that he apparently has actually sparred, trained with Michelle Pereira when they were both in the U.S. before. I had no idea. That's a very interesting fact. Yeah, that is interesting. If they know each other, it might slow each other down a little bit. Thinking this might be something that factors into the overs for this fight, coinciding with your template. Like them even more now. Yeah, the template does like the overs. It's going to be one of the biggest butt pucker bets that you can make. But, sometimes when it's telling you that it's plus EV, you just got to bite the bullet and make the bet if you want to be somebody that's using these data cues to get you what you would call a plus EV bet or an underpriced bet. We got my guy Vitek in the room saying, Oi, excited I get to watch this one live. What up, Unc? All is well, man. Not usual time for me to do this show, but we got to get it done. We got to do the work, and I just had so much work to do to finish up this offering. It'll also be available on Dub Club, this Patreon package, or I should call it the probability package, will also be available on Dub Club, and all that content that Brady and I are doing to support this will also be there available on Dub Club. So check that out. We got Dix Insider saying Weezy will be here shortly, guys. He's taking his spanakopita out of the airy fryer. Yeah, I actually haven't eaten anything yet today, but I do have my coffee here, so that's going to get me through the show, and then I'm going to finally eat after I'm done breaking down these fights for you guys. I was going to say, Dixon, that Pereira Ihor tidbit could be good for the overs. Yeah, it could be, man. We got Giga Chat of NPCs. Weezy, are you drunk? Why is this at 11 a.m.? I am not drunk. I did not even Irish up my coffee. No Kahlua or Drambuie in here for your Uncle Weezy. Just pure black coffee. And then we got a big thing of water here to kind of wash that down. So we're going to try to stay hydrated while we break down these fights for you guys. But thanks for checking in, Giga Chad. We got JP Taylor saying, Oi, Weezy in the afternoon. Yes. We got Dixon saying, everyone smash the like. Yeah, please do. Smash that like button. We got Jay Jack in the room saying, what's good, Weezy? Can't wait for this card. I really like Brito this fight. I can't wait to break that one down with you, man. Matt W saying, what time is the press conference today? Can't seem to find anything. No clue. We got Olajuwon saying, I was wondering that too, Matt. I haven't seen anything about a presser. I got Hoofy at minus 156 on Sunday. CLV trophy for JP Taylor. Get it, put it up there, take a picture with it. You got to love that CLV, man. We got Olajuwon saying Ruffy minus 170 for me. What I got minus 156. We got JP saying apparently Hoofy was plus money when the Lions dropped. Mullarkey is getting starched. He's been knocked out in 5 of 7 losses. So yeah, man, that's it's not the best look. And you guys, ring a ding ding. My guy Marcus Williams checking in here from the Nubian Bookstore saying, I am enjoying the show from the ATL. Keep up the good work. Nubian Bookstore in the house. Marcus, always good to see you hanging out here. I truly appreciate the support to the show, brother. Let's stack cash tickets like flapjacks for this event and move on to the next, man. Everybody check out Marcus Williams down there in Atlanta with the Nubian Bookstore. But I know it's a different city. I keep thinking it's not Atlanta, but Marcus will tell us. We got Jared Curry saying, oh, yeah, sadly, this is only the second best tip I've ever gotten from an uncle. Oh, hey-oh, Jared Curry. We got Olajuwon Dream saying agree. Played under 2.5 at minus 175 as well for the Hoofy fight I think he's talking about. We got Jester saying, what's up, Unc? I'm live down by Champaign. Got my tickets, making the couple-hour drive to St. Louis next week. My first event. That's awesome, dude. So Champaign, Illinois, stand up. University of Illinois, stand up. And he's going to be making that drive down to St. Louis from there, probably about a 2-hour drive, maybe something like that. And you got to check out East St. Louis on the way. I hear it is absolutely beautiful this time of year, Jester. But yeah, first event. I know you're going to enjoy it. It's not the best name brand event, but there are a lot of compelling fights on that card. And I'm sure it's going to be a very live, very real crowd down there in St. Louis. So I'm really looking forward to that event. We got Giga Chad in the room. We got Olajuwon saying dark, medium, or light roast coffee. I would say a medium roast here. We get this. There's a coffee roaster in Chicago called Sputnik, and I get a 5-pound bag delivered to me like every 8 weeks, and it just takes me through everything. Get a fresh grind in the morning. I have about just a little bit more than what this can hold, you know. So I'll drink about a third of it, top it off, and it just gets me through the first part of the day here. So yeah, man, but we got to get through the first part of this card, you guys. Hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Please consider joining the Patreon and getting on board with that $25 a month probability tier so that you'll have access to all this great information going forward. Really looking forward to breaking down these fights with you guys. We're going to start with this curtain jerker, which is going to be Alessandro Costa. He's a minus 130 favorite against the Black Cock, Kevin Borjas, the plus 110 underdog. We got the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 140 for this fight. So let's first start talking about the trends here. Costa is 1-2 thus far in the UFC. He's got losses to elite fighters like Amir Albazi by third round knockout as a plus 335 underdog, and a 29-28 unanimous decision loss to title challenger Steve Erceg as a plus 165 dog, where he won the second round, but he lost the first and the third there. So close enough fight against a really good fighter in Erceg. His lone UFC win came against Jimmy Flick. That was by second round ground and pound as a minus 275 favorite. Costa's going to be facing off against El Gallo Negro, Kevin Borjas. He's a Peruvian fighter with a 9-2 pro record who's 0-1 thus far in the UFC as he lost a 29-28 unanimous decision to Joshua Van, who's undefeated thus far in the UFC. He was a plus 190 underdog to Van in that fight. Both of these guys have looked good so far in the UFC, holding their own in losses against tough opponents like Van, Albazi, Erceg, while we saw Costa dominate against a lower level opponent like Flick. Both of these guys are excellent strikers with a lot of power, but Costa has the grappling edge here, being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who has 6 wins and 0 losses career to the submission, while Borjas is 0 wins and 1 loss to the submission. Should be a banger to start the card. Costa is about a minus 135 favorite at the moment over Borjas. Alessandro Costa, the advantages that he's going to have in this fight, he's got the overall experience advantage. 6 more pro fights, 50 more minutes of professional cage time. He's also got the UFC experience advantage with 2 more fights and 18 more minutes of octagon time. Costa's going to have the power advantage here, in my opinion. This dude hits hard. He swings hooks as if they land, it's going to be a problem. He keeps his hands high. He's got good boxing fundamentals. And once he gets into the pocket, he swings with power and purpose. And Costa's also going to have the grappling advantage in this spot. 6-0 to the sub, as I mentioned earlier. And Borjas definitely prefers to stand and bang and use his wrestling in reverse, while Costa actually has solid submissions and heavy top control and ground and pound. If Costa can force the grappling exchanges in this fight and get takedowns, he should easily win this fight. Costa's also very aggressive, looking to finish fights with his submissions, so that could cost him some control time, but also make him far more likely guy to finish this fight should it go to the ground. And I also believe that Alessandro Costa has the strength of schedule advantage. He's got the UFC and overall strength of schedule advantages here. He's fought the better guys at this level and more of them. Now, Borjas is going to be 2 years younger. He's going to be 1 inch taller and have a 1 inch reach advantage. So he's got some nice measurables advantages in this spot. And he's got the striking advantage. I mean, this dude loves to stand and bang. He's got good boxing, loves to rip to the body, which always that always shows like really intelligent and well-schooled boxing. He throws a lot of volume and he's very durable. I rate Borjas as the superior minute winner at range because he throws more and he flashes power of his own. But he will have to be careful of how he enters the pocket against Costa, who loves to counter and swing bombs in the pocket. So it's a great fight to start the card. I like a lot on the Costa side here. The home crowd advantage, the overall and UFC experience advantages, the power advantage, the grappling and strength of schedule advantages. Borjas has great boxing, great durability, and he showed in his Dana White Contender Series fight that he can stop takedowns and get back up when he is taken down. He yielded 5 takedowns in just under 8 minutes of control time to Diaz, but he stuffed 7 takedown attempts and he got 2 reverses and over a minute of control time of his own. So Borjas won that 29-28 unanimous decision there by outlanding Diaz 84-33 at distance. If this stays standing, I think it'll be close. But if Costa is successfully able to mix in the wrestling and get to a dominant position or two on the mat, I think he could find a submission. I think Costa's the rightful favorite here with all the advantages that he has on paper, being the more well-rounded fighter who has fought the better brand of competition. And I'm going to pick Alessandro Costa to win this fight by first round submission. So let me get these make picks here. We'll get this page up. And I'm going to pick Costa to get this submission against Kevin Borjas here in front of the home crowd. And I'm going to pick him to do it early. And I want to show you guys, I am looking at the betting template here. And Alessandro Costa by submission is plus 550. That's a 15.38% price of the line or implied probability of the line. It's a little bit overpriced with having to do to the adjusted benchmark for the division. But if we look at these guys outside the UFC, 6 of 9 wins for Costa in 3-round fights come by submission. 1 of 2 losses for Borjas comes by submission. He was submitted in Combate on the regional scene against Renzo Mendez by, I think it was I forget whether it was a triangle. But either way, obviously this guy does want to keep the fight standing, and Costa's a guy who is very dangerous with the submission. And I think it's a cheeky bet because Costa, we haven't seen him grapple offensively much in the UFC yet, but he's faced really good grapplers and really good wrestlers thus far. So, you're not going to really see him, offensively grapple much against Erceg, against Flick, against Amir Albazi. But in this particular situation, we might see Costa, grapple and try to take advantage of the hole in Borjas's game that he has there a little bit. And if he can do that, 6 and 9 wins, 1 of 2 losses, adjusted win condition overall is about 36%. We're only paying 15.38%. So I took a quarter unit shot on Alessandro Costa by submission at plus 550. But the pick is going to be Costa by first round submission, everybody. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. We got Zach Johnson in the room saying, what up, Weezy? Good to see you, Jack. Thanks for hanging out. Or Zach, thanks for hanging out, man. We got JP Taylor saying one of the few dogger pass fights on the card, in his opinion. If it's close going to the cards, Costa wins. And we're going to see, the crowd is going to be so loud behind the Brazilian fighters. I do think that's going to influence the judges in certain fights for sure. Peru is at elevation. If Borjas trains at home. Yes, I do know. Peru, Machu Picchu, way up there. A lot of mountains in Peru. So definitely a lot of elevation in that country. All right. Let's move on to the next fight. We got 31 of you guys hanging out live. Smash that thumbs up if you feel like it. And then let's move on to this next fight, which is going to be Ismael Bonfim, the Mahatinha, at minus 550 going up against Vinc from hell, Pichel at plus 400. The fight doesn't go to decision at minus 135 for this fight. So let's talk about the trends here. Ismael Bonfim is coming off his first loss in a very long time. He was a minus 320 favorite against Benoit Saint Denis, and he lost in the first round by rear naked choke. He was then scheduled to fight Vinc Pichel in November of 2023, but he missed weight by 3.5 pounds, and the fight was called off. So prior to the Saint Denis fight, Bonfim was on a 13-fight winning streak that spanned almost 9 years. He hadn't lost since he was submitted in the first round against Renato Moicano back in 2014 when he was 19 years old. So you can see in retrospect why he was a minus 320 favorite against a stud like Benoit Saint Denis. Bonfim will be fighting at home in Brazil against the 41-year-old Vinc Pichel. Vinc, who is coming off a loss, and he's also on a 2-year layoff, as you can see right here on the advanced stats. It's an over 2-year layoff right now for Vinc Pichel in this fight. Vinc has won 3 of his last 4 fights, though. A 29-28 unanimous decision in 2019 versus Roosevelt Roberts. And he was a plus 200 underdog in that fight, so we cashed for bettors there. Another 29-28 unanimous decision win over Jim fucking Miller as a minus 135 favorite. And then yet another unanimous decision win. This one 30-27 over Austin Hubbard back in 2021 that we just saw get a win over Michael Figlak last week. So he was a minus 140 favorite. Vinc Pichel was in that fight. So Pichel's last fight was a 30-27 unanimous decision loss to Mark Madsen as a minus 115 pick'em, where Vinc outlanded Madsen 68-39 in significant strikes, but he was controlled for over 5 minutes on 3 takedowns by Mark Madsen in that fight. So after that fight, Vinc pulled out of scheduled bouts against Jesse Ronson and Benoit Saint Denis with injuries and had the first fight with Bonfim postponed due to Bonfim weight cut issues. So that's why we haven't seen From Hell Pichel for 2 years. Part of it is Bonfim's fault for missing weight back in November of last year. Otherwise, it would have been a year and a half layoff, but there were also injuries on the Pichel side that caused him to have to pull out of some fights. So right now, Ismael Bonfim, a big favorite at the moment over the 41-year-old Vinc Pichel. So the advantages on the Bonfim side, he's 13 years younger. 13 years younger than Vinc Pichel. And then not only is he that much younger than Vinc, he's actually got the overall experience advantage. He's 13 years younger, and he has more MMA experience than Vinc Pichel. He's got 6 more fights and 22 more minutes of pro cage time in 2 years less as a pro. So he's been more active, and he's got more experience. Bonfim turned pro, though, at the age of 15. He had to get emancipated from his parents in order to do so. So we have the rare situation where the much younger fighter is also more experienced. And Bonfim's the better finisher. Bonfim has a 68% career finish rate. He's got 4 submissions and 9 knockouts, which is better than Pichel's at 57. But all of Pichel's finishes come by way of knockout, while Bonfim is a little more diverse as he has 4 subs and 9 KOs. And Ismael's finished his only UFC win, while Pichel has finished only 1 of his 7 UFC wins. And then the striking advantage goes to Bonfim, in my opinion. Bonfim has a professional boxing background. He has excellent fundamentals and footwork. He loves to counter. He keeps his hands high on defense, and he has a ton of power. I like Ismael to win the minutes and the moments at distance striking range in this fight. But Vinc Pichel is going to be the bigger guy. He's 2 inches taller. He's got a 1-inch reach advantage. He has the UFC experience advantage as he's got 7 more fights at the UFC level and 105 more minutes of octagon time since 2013. Vinc is going to have the wrestling and grappling advantages here. Vinc has excellent grappling metrics over a large sample size of fights. He's faced elite wrestlers like Rustam Habilov, Gregor Gillespie, and Mark Madsen, so his efficiency numbers are below average. But against guys who aren't elite grapplers, Vinc is demonstrating the ability to win minutes. He gets 3.1 takedowns per 15 minutes on 5.6 attempts. That's 54.5% accuracy, which is way above average. He outcontrols his opponents 30% to 20%, winning over 60% of the control time positions in his fights. And Vinc should be outmatched at distance here, but if he mixes in the wrestling, he can drag Bonfim into his kind of fight here and make this pretty close and pretty dirty. And the strength of schedule advantage has to go to Vinc Pichel. Bonfim's metrics in 2 UFC fights are actually better than Pichel's on the aggregate. However, Vinc has definitely fought the better guys over his career due to having 8 more UFC fights than Bonfim does. So it's hard to get past the 13-year age gap here. Pichel is 6 wins and 1 loss in decisions at the UFC level, and Bonfim is 6-0 as a pro to the decision in his own right. I rate Bonfim with most of the finishing equity here, so the line isn't that far off when you mix in the 13-year age gap and the 2-year layoff for the oft-injured Vinc Pichel. I think Vinc could use his size, his length, and his experience advantages here to make this fight dirty, force Bonfim to wrestle, drag him into deep water, and find a way to win minutes, but it's going to be hard to win rounds with wrestling these days, especially in Brazil in front of a hostile crowd. I rate Bonfim as the much more dangerous striker with the better ability to win minutes, and his takedown defense isn't bad at all. I think both of these guys will be a little low volume, waiting for the other to lead so that they can counter. And I see Vinc making this fight dirty by forcing Ismael to wrestle. I think Ismael lands the bigger shots, but Vinc shows how durable and tough he is by making this fight go the full 15. I bet the fight goes to decision here at plus 120. It's a massive trifecta bet on my over-under template. And I think Ismael gets the dub here. So the pick is going to be Ismael Bonfim to win by decision. Oh, it's Maheta now. It's not Mahetinha. Is it his brother that's Mahetinha? Anyway, Bonfim by decision is the pick. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. We got JP saying, wouldn't shock me in the least if Bonfim comes in heavy again. Yeah, man, 3.5 pound miss last time. So we're going to have to keep an eye on Ismael Bonfim on the scales. And if he screws Vinc Pichel out of another fight check, I think Vinc is actually going to lose it, completely lose it on this guy. Manuel Torres would starch Bonfim. I mean, dude, I love Manuel Torres. Manuel Torres is incredible. So, Zach Johnson asking, can you really get behind a minus 500 Bonfim money line, though? And the answer is no, dude. I mean, like, even if we look at the betting template here, these bets on the Bonfim side, you know, we don't have much of a sample size, but, you know, Vinc Pichel by decision at plus 650, 6 of his 7 wins are by decision, you know, and just because just because Bonfim has lost, you know, to Benoit Saint-Denis inside the distance, Benoit Saint-Denis is a 100% finish rate. Vinc Pichel has only finished 1 of 7 of his UFC wins. So I don't think he's, you know, if Vinc wins, that he's finishing here. So especially now that he's 41 years old. So I think instead of betting the Pichel money line, you can even get Pichel decision at plus 650. And you could bet like 0.2 units to win 1.3 there. It can be a real small bet, but I mean, I think he's got a chance to win some minutes here. So you never know, man. Andrew G saying, Vinc, no chance in hell. Bonfim is on the juice. Oh, yeah, well, he might be. Like my guy Dan Levy says, harvesting the fruit, the garden of life, fruits and vegetables. Yeah, I could see that, Weezy. Greasy decision, Bonfim. Potentially. They're not paying you a ton for it, but, you know, because the money line's minus 525, so all the props are going to be juiced to the tits here. But, yeah, man, I mean, the sub at plus 525 is kind of interesting. The decision at plus 170 is okay. But there's nothing, you know, obviously when the money line is that juiced, the props are going to be juiced as well. Entire world has Bonfim in a parlay. Yeah, dude, I bet a lot of people are going to have a lot of these wide favorites in parlays for sure, but not your Uncle Weezy this week. And then we got Zach Johnson saying, I think Bonfim brothers are overrated as fuck. Well, we're going to find out, man. I mean, but he does say Ismael is worse. Yeah, I mean, Gabriel's got the much more, in my opinion, the much more, well, how should I put this? Just dangerous, more opportunistic submission game. So, yeah, man. But let's move on to this next fight, dude. We've got Dione Barbosa here at minus 232 going up against Ernesta Kareckiate. And Kareckiate is a plus 197 underdog, and we got the fight doesn't go to decision here at plus money at plus 140 for this fight. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of stats for this one. Here, let me do this. I want to keep this up to 110. Is that what just happened there? 200. Egad, man. Yeah, and unfortunately, neither of these ladies have a UFC career thus far, so we don't have much in the way of stats. But let me take you through the write-up that I have for this fight. I'll put up the no, that won't help. That won't help much either, but it's a little more interesting to look at. Dione Barbosa is a Brazilian judo Olympian who has black belts in judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. She's 6-2 as a pro with 3 wins coming inside the distance by way of submission. Dione is 3-0 to the submission. She's 3-1 to the decision and 0-1 to the KO. Ernesta is 5-0-1 as a pro. She has a background as a competitive swimmer and has unusual height and length for the division. She punched her ticket to the UFC with a split decision win over Carly Judice as a plus 140 underdog in an absolute banger of a fight where both ladies threw a ton of volume and landed big shots. Prior to the Dana White's Contender Series fight, Ernesta fought mostly low-level competition on the regional scene outside of her 2 fights against Letitia Blow, where she went 1 win, 0 losses, and 1 draw. But the draw, she had a point taken, so that's why that one was a draw. And then the 1 win was a fight where I think both like commentators were talking about how Blow was going into the 5th round up 3-1 on their scorecards. So I think some people thought that Kareckiate lost the rematch with Letitia Blow, and that's going to be very important here. Those 2 fights for Kareckiate against Letitia Blow are going to play heavily into how I see this fight playing out. But we'll talk more about that later here. Ernesta is a 1+166 underdog to the home fighter in Barbosa, who's a -191 favorite. That's where the lines were when I wrote this up a couple of days ago. So you can see that there is some steam coming in on the Barbosa side right now. Both ladies make their UFC debut on Saturday. Now, Barbosa is going to have the overall experience advantage here. She's got 2 more fights, 5 more minutes of cage time. She's got the grappling advantage here. Dione is a black belt in both judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. She's a former judo Olympian who has several grappling accolades to her name, and she gets takedowns. She has excellent control in ground and pound, and she has a dangerous submission game. And the strength of schedule advantages on the Barbosa side here is her only 2 pro losses came against Josiane Nunez and the undefeated Jenna Bishop. And in that Nunez fight, Barbosa was winning that fight with her grappling. She was getting takedowns, a bunch of ground control time, landing ground and pound, trying to set up submissions. But at one point late in the 2nd round, Josiane Nunez got up and just went full rabies and just absolutely unloaded the both barrels on Barbosa and just knocked her out. So, you know, just because she got knocked out by Nunez, I mean, like, Kareckiate does not have that kind of power. So I think you got to keep in mind how she lost. And that Jenna Bishop fight was a very good fight, very close fight against somebody that's undefeated and a huge prospect right now. So Barbosa's strength of schedule advantage is definitely way better than Karekkaia's, and even Barbosa has a win over Karine Killer Silva on the regional scene as well. So definitely the better strength of schedule. And another key advantage here is that Dione Barbosa fighting at home in Brazil, while Ernesta Kareckiate, also making her UFC debut, has to make the long flight from Lithuania to Brazil to fight in front of a very hostile crowd. So, but Ernesta Kareckiate is 6 years younger. That's significant. She's 3 inches taller, and she's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage here. So huge measurables advantages on the Kareckiate side. And she's got the distance striking advantage, in my opinion. She's tall and long. She's got phenomenal conditioning, and she uses that conditioning to throw lots of output. She landed 184 significant strikes in 15 minutes against Carly Judice on Dana White's Contender Series, and she won a close split decision in that fight. She marched forward, drowning Carly in volume, landed some big shots, but because of the reckless forward pressure, she wound up eating a ton of clean shots as well. Ernesta's combination of conditioning, durability, pressure, and volume is going to win her some fights at this level, and she's still only 25 years old, so she could make significant improvements to her skill set in short periods of time. So this is a fun fight between 2 debuting fighters here. I favor the youth, the height, the reach, and the minute winning in the distance striking exchanges and the conditioning of Kareckiate, while on the Barbosa side, I like the experience, the grappling, the strength of schedule advantages that Barbosa has. Both fighters are making their debut, so nerves and potential adrenaline dumps are in play, but it's worse for Kareckiate, who's making the long flight from Europe to fight in front of a very hostile crowd that will clearly be behind Barbosa. Watching Ernesta struggle with getting taken down with inside trips and body lock throws against Letitia Blow in both of their fights leads me to believe that Barbosa will have an easy time getting this fight to the ground and keeping it there. The grappling differential in this fight is way bigger in favor of Barbosa than the striking advantage is for Ernesta. And Barbosa has flashed some solid power on the feet in her own in past fights against superior opponents. So I think the striking exchanges will be close due to Barbosa's ability to land big shots, along with Ernesta's tendency to eat big shots. Both ladies are excellent prospects who have a chance to win fights at this level, but I think Barbosa is more experienced, tested, well-rounded, and the way more dangerous of a minute and moment winner in the grappling exchanges. I like Barbosa by decision, but the sub is very live in my opinion. And I actually did pick Barbosa to win this fight by submission. So the official pick, Dione Barbosa, the Witch, to win by submission in round number 2. But I want to highlight a bet here that we see on the template, and it is plus 2,000 for Dione Barbosa to win by knockout. Now, she has no knockout wins, but when you watch the tape on Barbosa, particularly in the Jenna Bishop fight, now Jenna Bishop's 8-0, and she's a very top-notch prospect right now. You see Barbosa drop her twice in that fight. She's got big power on the feet, and when you watch the Kareckiate fight, she's getting hit. She's blocking punches with her face. Her defense is not there. You know, she may have landed almost 200 significant strikes, but she absorbed over 160, and Barbosa hits hard. So I do think that Barbosa could potentially be live for a ground and pound knockout. Look, she's got a plus 225 inside the distance prop, which is 30%. But they're basically saying that the sub is like 90% of her win condition. But at this level, you see the knockout 17.24% of the time, but you see the submission 21% of the time. So, the long-term averages tell you that KO TKO at plus 2,000 is just way underpriced. And then I found it at plus 2,200 on Bet Online. So I have a tracked bet, 1/10 of a unit, Dione Barbosa by KO plus 2,200, because it's such a small output of units, 0.1 units to win 2.2. And ground and pound is always in play when you're looking at somebody that has a grappling advantage. So I think that Barbosa might get her first knockout here, and I bet it. But I do also have a bet on Dione Barbosa's money line at minus 191 for 1 unit. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. We got, JP saying Bonfim juice to the tits on more ways than one. The line and perhaps the Garden of Life fruits and vegetables. We got my guy D Spearman is in the room saying, Uncle Weezy, what's up, D? Good to see you checking in, man. Thanks for hanging out with us here. We got Zach saying, I have a good feeling about a Barbosa sub inside tip. Okay, there you go. There you go. I'm betting Barbosa. I think she gets the job done, and I think she gets the job done inside the distance. Matt saying, I think Ernesta wins. Decent striking, in her contender series peers Vinicius Oliveira, Danny Silva, and Barlow seem to be doing good in the UFC. Yeah, I liked Ernesta's performance on and like I highlighted in the breakdown of the fight. I think the way that she fights, she's going to be getting some wins at this level. She's still young. She's still improving. She's still rounding out her game. But I do like Barbosa's grappling advantage a lot more than I like Karekkiate's striking advantage. So I got to pick Barbosa to win the fight. These fights on 301 are bangers from top to bottom. I don't know why so many people have been complaining. Yeah, I think there's a lot of fun fights on this card. We got Zach saying, let's go Barbosa sub. He's saying playing inside the distance and sub. There you go. We got this fight feels like Loma versus Bruna Brasil. We got Zach saying, play inside the distance and KO. Yeah, I mean, the inside the distance prop is 225 and the subs at 260. It's such a small difference in implied probability, only 3%, that you might want to say, I'm not going to get greedy. Or if you do play that inside the distance, then just touch up for just the smallest amount, that KO, just in case it happens, because you could put a really small output there on that KO if you bet the sub. I put a sawbuck on that KO prop. Yeah, there you go. $10 to win 200 or 2,200. There you go. And Jacob in the room saying, oi, what's up, Jacob? Thanks for hanging out with us here, man. Let's move on to this next fight. It's going to be Mauricio Ruffy at minus 205 going up against Jamie Mullarkey, the plus 175 underdog. We got fight doesn't go to decision juiced up here at minus 250 for this fight. God, that is really juicy for two guys that can be a little bit low volume at times. Let's get these stats up on the screen. Let's see here. There we go. And did I get the line up there? Yes, we did. So let's first start talking about the trends in this fight after I get a sip of coffee. You guys, I got to wet the whistle here. All right. Now, Mauricio Ruffy is an interesting prospect and an interesting dude. He was a bodyguard for a billionaire, and he did some underground fighting while he was in that occupation. He moved to Sao Paulo at the age of 13 to train with his uncle, mixed martial arts. He seems to be cut out for this and has been planning for a career in combat sports from a very young age. Ruffy's 9-1 as a pro. 100% of his fights have finished inside the distance by way of knockout. His average fight time is 5.1 minutes, but he showed on Dana White's Contender Series that the fight versus Magomedov, where he was a plus 180 underdog, that he can go the full 3 rounds and has the ability to improve as the fight goes on, which is very important against an experienced veteran like Jamie Mullarkey. This will be Ruffy's UFC debut in front of a massive live crowd in his home country of Brazil. A lot of nerves and expectations for him in this fight. Ruffy will be fighting Jamie Mullarkey, a 10-fight UFC veteran from Australia who's 5-5 in the UFC. Mullarkey's 3-2 in his last 5 with wins over John Makdessi by split decision as a minus 270 favorite, a fight that Mullarkey should have lost. Francisco Prado by unanimous decision as a minus 280 favorite. Prado was on less than a week's notice and had to fly from Argentina to Australia for that fight. And then Michael Johnson by split decision as a minus 230 favorite. Yet another fight he had a decision go his way that I thought shouldn't have. But very important to note that the market is really overrated Mullarkey's skills as a UFC fighter, making him as a minus 270 favorite versus Makdessi and a minus 280 favorite against Johnson. And in both of those fights, Mullarkey looked like he should have been plus 125. And Mullarkey also dropped the ball against Muhammad Naimov, who took that fight on short notice up a weight class. And Mullarkey was a minus 450 favorite in that fight. So, and Mullarkey was most recently knocked out in the first round by a guy who only wins by decision in Nasrat Haqparast as a plus 160 underdog. So Mullarkey's currently a plus 145 underdog in Brazil to the debuting fighter and Mauricio Ruffy, who's checking in at minus 170. And once again, I write these fights up as I research them. So that tells you how far the line's already come. I wrote this up 2 days ago, and Ruffy was minus 170, and he's minus 200 now. So here's the advantages on the Ruffy side. He's 2 years younger. He's got a 1-inch reach advantage. He's got the finishing ability, 100% finish rate in 10 pro wins, all by knockout. Ruffy has a tendency to win moments, and he's facing a guy that's been knocked out in 3 of his 5 UFC losses and who's been dropped 5 times in 10 UFC fights. I definitely rate Ruffy as the more dangerous fighter who's more likely to win moments at range. And Ruffy's got the power advantage as well. We discussed this already. Big power differential in favor of Ruffy here. Ruffy has a nasty counter right hand, and his low leg kicks are heavy. Now, Jamie Mullarkey is going to be 1 inch taller. He's got the overall experience advantage with 14 more fights and 150 more minutes of cage time in 3 more years as a pro. We got the UFC experience advantage as well for Mullarkey, obviously, and a big one at that, with 10 more fights and 100 more minutes of octagon time as Ruffy's making his debut on Saturday. Well-rounded skill set and minute-winning ability here for Mullarkey. Ruffy's never seen the scorecards, while Mullarkey is 4 wins and 2 losses to the decision in his career. He's been in a lot of close fights, but he finds a way to get his hand raised. And the wrestling and grappling advantages go to Mullarkey, in my opinion, as well. He's an active wrestler at the UFC level, getting 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes on just over 7 attempts, both above average for the division. Jamie's out-controlling his opponents 20% to 5%, so he's winning about 80% of the control time positions that his fights are in, and he definitely has the capability to win minutes with his grappling game. And the strength of schedule, obviously, that's going to Mullarkey as well, as he's got 10 UFC fights, while Jamie has fought, beaten, and lost to the better brand of competition. So there's a lot of advantages to like on the Mullarkey side here. He's taller. He's more experienced overall and in the UFC. He's the better minute winner in the grappling exchanges, and he's fought the better brand of competition. Mullarkey's solid everywhere, but special nowhere. Ruffy looks the part. He's explosive. He's powerful. He's got great counters and the patience to set them up. And his takedown defense looks really good on tape. So I think he keeps this fight standing. Mullarkey has been dropped 5 times in 10 UFC fights. He's absorbing a knockdown on over 1% of the significant strikes that he's absorbing. And 5 of his 7 losses come by way of knockout. So I do think that Ruffy flatlines Mullarkey. I don't think it's going to be a very close fight. The power and the precision is definitely on the Ruffy side, and his level of regional scene competition hasn't been half bad. So I think he's good enough to get the job done in front of his home crowd here. And I'm going to pick Mauricio Ruffy to win this fight by second round knockout. There we go. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Let's see. We got Andrew saying, yeah, he looks like Conor McGregor. Yeah, dude, he has that. He has a similar stance. You know, he has that kind of like bladed, traditional martial arts stance with a wide distance between the feet, and he's setting up that power counter hand. You know, so for Ruffy, it's the right hand. Conor McGregor obviously is southpaw, so he was in the opposite stance. But the way that McGregor would kind of lunge in with that power straight left is similar to how Ruffy kind of looks for that counter as well. And I actually see a little bit of a similar style in William Gomis, who we'll talk about later. Just he's got that power hand cocked, and he's just saying, if you come in here, I'm throwing this straight hand right at your face. So I think that Ruffy, that's why that comparison is being made for a lot of people. Ruffy KO, says Olajuwon Dream. JP Taylor saying Mullarkey is the human embodiment of Glass Jaw. Glass Joe from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I remember that, man. The first fight that you had was against Glass Joe, and you just beat 7 shades of shit out of him. Spitting image, LOL, and the jaw to match. That's hilarious. He does kind of look at him. We got Joe Rogan's forehead wrinkles saying 45 minutes in and only 3 fight picks. Jesus Christ, the pacing of this podcast is terrible. Save the chat for the end and get through the fights. Goddamn, son. Hey, you're welcome to leave, Joe Rogan's forehead wrinkles, if you don't like the pacing of the show. I take my time. I do really in-depth breakdowns of each fight, and I like to actually interact with the people who give a shit enough to showing up and listen to the show and appreciate the breakdowns. We got Andrew saying, yeah, I'm going to bet Ruffy KO too. I heard he's got power, one shot. He does, man. I mean, the guy has got serious power. All of his wins, but inside the distance by way of KO. I see you have forehead wrinkles. We got Jacob saying Mullarkey gets chin checked every fight, even the ones he's won. Yes, dude. I mean, like, he's fighting a really good level of competition, and Ruffy's a very precise striker. Yeah, you could leave, nephew. That's for sure. Olajuwon saying, judging by the odds, it looks like the bookies think Mullarkey's best path to victory is a decision. Yeah, I mean, like, Ruffy's a pretty durable guy, but he has been finished in his only loss. He took a pretty bad knockout against an undefeated fighter in Sosa. We got, if Ruffy wins, who do you think he should fight next? I don't know. There's such a big division that they could go any direction that they want, but I think Ruffy's got some star power, so I think that they're going to try to set him up and probably try to get him a couple more wins. Is plus 280 good enough for Ruffy first round KO? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, man. I'm not trying to pick rounds here because Ruffy is patient. He is going to set up that big shot, and by setting it up, it just is going to make it way more likely that he's going to land it. Rook Johnson saying Ihor looks like an emo yak. We got Olajuwon saying the way you read James Joe Rogan's comment, LOL. Weezy, I just beat the pulp out of Mr. Wrinkles with your bag of oranges. There you go, man. Chris Reed saying, oi. We got Benino saying betting on KO props at chalk is a great way to lose money. Yeah, I know, dude. It is. I agree completely. Mark Frost, I don't know how anyone can bet on Ruffy. It's hard to lay minus 200 on a debutant against a 10-fight veteran. It really is. You know, we could go through a laundry list of fights where somebody, a great UFC fighter, wound up losing their UFC debut. There's a laundry list of guys that went 0-1 to start their UFC careers. A lot of nerves, a lot of potential for adrenaline dump in that first fight. How can anyone bet on Mullarkey with that chin? I hear you, man. And then Jacob saying Ruffy was winning that fight as well till he got caught. Yeah, I know he was, dude. And that dude hits hard, and like I think he would have gotten a lot of people out of there with the big shots that he was landing up until that point. But let's move on to this next fight. We got Joaquim Silva, Neto BJJ at plus 145 going up against we got Drakkar Klose is the opponent here. Silva plus 145, Klose minus 170. Fight doesn't go to decision, juiced at minus 145 here. All right. There we got the stats up. And this is one that I really didn't have a whole lot of interest in playing. There's one bet that's sticking out here. It's the fight goes to decision. We'll talk about it. But with Silva and Klose, you got guys that are at very similar points in their careers right now. Klose is 36. Joaquim Silva is 35. Klose is 1 inch taller. He's got a 1 inch reach advantage. These guys both have 17 pro fights. They both have 10 pro UFC fights. Both of these guys land a very similar amount of strikes at distance. In terms of power numbers, they're both very similar as well. It's just that we see Drakkar Klose actually going to the grappling a lot more, but he's not the most efficient grappler, while Joaquim Silva is fairly efficient according to my metrics. And in terms of the strength of schedule, it's almost identical overall. In terms of the strength of wins, it's almost identical overall. You got Joaquim Silva fighting at home here in Brazil against Klose. And then, I mean, you know, Klose is a guy who has looked a lot busier lately. He looked great in that Brandon Jenkins fight. Got a slam KO against Joe Solecki. He beat Rafa Garcia, who I think is a tough fighter and a tough out. So I think he's just fighting at a little bit higher of a level right now. You know, Joaquim Silva, you probably should be able to finish Clay Guida at this point in your career if you are an elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player, but Clay Guida has been submitted 11 times in his career, and Joaquim Silva couldn't find a submission against him. So these are guys that I don't want to back with my money right now. I don't want to lay minus 170 on Drakkar Klose. I don't want to take an underdog shot on Joaquim Silva, even at home here, because I think people are overrating him in a loss a little bit against Arman Sarukian. And he got knocked out by Rick Glenn just 3 fights ago. That's terrifying. You're getting knocked out by Ricky Glenn in the last 2 or 3 years. That's a huge red flag. So what I did bet here was the over, or I mean the fight. No, what I'm thinking about betting. I haven't bet it yet, but we talked about it last night. Is the fight goes to decision at around plus 120. It's a trifecta bet on the template. It's underpriced at 45% according to the 49% benchmark. According to the 55% fight goes to decision rate in a 20 fight sample size between these two guys. So we're getting about 19% in price savings here. And it likes the over 2.5 even more with 21.74% in price savings here, because Joaquim Silva has had 2 UFC fights finish in the last 2.5 minutes of round 3. So because of that, it likes both of these overs because both of these guys are not the best finishers at this level, frankly. Klose, not much of a finisher at this level. Brandon Jenkins, who cares if he's finishing that guy? And then Silva as well, you know. Silva, if we look over here, you know, he's not even finishing Clay Guida. You know, he finishes Jesse Ronson, but Ronson's 0-5 in the UFC. So, I mean, I don't really know what that, you know, like Klose is 8-2 in the UFC. So, I mean, like, you know, getting getting a finish against Jesse Ronson doesn't mean that you have any finishing equity against somebody as good as Drakkar Klose. So the pick for this fight is going to be Drakkar Klose by decision. Close decision. And I do like the over 2.5 rounds at -118, and I like the fight goes to decision around +115, +120. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Yeah, and Olajuwon Dream saying he ended up playing fight goes to decision after probability last night. Yeah, Brady and we broke down that bet last night, and it's one I almost put on the probability parlay, but I decided to go with something I liked a little more stylistically, because I don't think I can count on either of these guys right now. Close to get a finish, Joaquim to get a finish, but I could see Joaquim getting knocked out, because if you can get knocked out by Rick Glenn, that's the only thing that really worries me here. I think Klose's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is good enough to avoid any submission attempts from Silva. I don't really think that Silva's knocking out Klose, but I'm worried that Klose could get a knockout, because we've seen Silva get finished by Rick Glenn. We got Jacob is saying he parlayed Klose in Ohio a long time ago, and now Kyle's line is shot down, and I can't cash out. Gotta hope prime Drakkar Klose shows up. I rated him as a decent prospect before that long layoff. Yeah, no, he's a good fighter, dude. He puts on a lot of pressure. He throws good amount of volume, and he wears on his opponents too. So I think he's a very good fighter, and he's at a great camp in the MMA lab. Close by decision, says Zach Johnson. He's a stud in my opinion, and he's looked good since he's come back from that layoff after getting shoved by Jeremy Stevens at the weigh-ins and getting that concussion. So this fight's going to be close, says Andrew G. I don't think the judges can even give the Brazilian here. It won't be close. Close as a dog. Yeah, man, it's a fun fight. But let's move on to the next one. It's going to be Gene Silva versus William Gomis. Gene Silva is a -122 favorite here. We got Gomis, the +102 underdog. Fight doesn't go to decision here, is at +115 for this fight. So let's get these stats up here for you guys, and let's start talking about the trends in this fight. So Gene Silva is on a 9-fight winning streak right now. His last loss came against Gabriel Schupp by unanimous decision back in April of 2018. So this kid hasn't lost in 6 years now. Since that loss, Silva's won 9 straight, and 8 of those 9 wins come in the first round. Gene violently shaved the ass of Weston Wilson in his UFC debut as a massive -950 favorite, and he punched his ticket to the UFC with an impressive 29-28 unanimous decision win over Kevin Vallejos on Dana White's Contender Series. Gene is facing French Sanda specialist William Gomis, who's 3-0 in the UFC thus far, and he's on an 11-fight win streak of his own. William is 13-2 as a professional, and his only 2 losses as a pro come against top-notch fighters Morgan Charrier and Saladin Parnas. Both of those losses were back in 2016. Gomis won his UFC debut by majority decision against Jarno Aarons as a -220 favorite. He won at the UFC Apex as a +170 underdog against Francis Marshall by 29-28 split decision, after losing the 3rd round after being taken down and dominated in the grappling. Gomis most recently was winning the first 2 rounds of the Gamuri fight as a -210 favorite before the fight was prematurely stopped after Gomis kicked Gamuri in the cup, but the ref didn't see it and then stopped the fight when Yanis turned his back. A fight Gomis was winning, but he didn't deserve a stoppage win there, but he was going to win that fight anyway. Gene Silva right now, at the time of writing, was a -148 favorite versus William Gomis, but you can see there's been a lot of money that's come in on the Gomis side since then, and some of that is mine. Gene Silva's advantages in this fight, he's got the finishing ability. He's finished 11 of his 12 pro wins. He's got 2 submissions and 9 knockouts. That's a 92% finish rate. Gomis hasn't really finished any of his three UFC wins, and he's got a 62% finish rate as a pro. Silva hits very hard and has a tendency to find those big moments with his striking. So Gomis needs to be very careful defensively in this fight. It's a very small sample size of data against a low-level opponent in Weston Wilson, but Silva landed so many power shots there, And he did the same on Dana White's Contender Series against Vallejos. I love the power, the precision, and the diverse striking attack of Gene Silva, and I rate him as the more powerful striker and more opportunistic finisher in this fight. Now, William Gomis, the younger fighter, he's about 6 months younger than Gene Silva, but he's way bigger. He's 5 inches taller, and he's got a 4-inch reach advantage, so that is going to be significant in this fight. He's also the more experienced fighter. He's got a pro experience advantage, 1 more fight, but 65 more minutes of pro cage time. And he's got the UFC experience advantage with 2 more fights and almost 40 more minutes of octagon time. The minute winning overall, that advantage, in my opinion, goes to William Gomis. He's got a positive 1.9 distance striking differential, 45.5% accuracy. That's 5.5% better than the divisional average. He's got 78.8%, almost 79% distance striking defense. That's almost 20% better than the divisional average. He only absorbs 1.5 significant strikes per minute and has never been knocked down in the UFC or knocked out as a professional. Gomis is a very talented and defensively sound kickboxer. He's constantly feinting. He has really fast kicks to all targets on the body. He's got a blistering counter straight left that pretty much freezes the offense of his opponents, and he uses his height and length very well to maintain range. It's really frustrating to stay at range with this kid because he's so hard to find and he has so much speed and length. Gomis has a solid clinch game and above average grappling efficiency at the UFC level as well. William has the tools to win minutes wherever the fight goes. And even though he hasn't flashed power yet in the UFC, I do believe he has a highlight reel KO in him, and it could be by a head kick. And the strength of schedule advantage also on the Gomis side here. He's fought, beaten, and lost to the better brand of UFC competition. So a very interesting fight between a minute winner in Gomis and a dynamic and flashy moment winner in Silva. Gomis making a long flight from Paris to Rio, and he'll be fighting in front of a very hostile crowd against a very intimidating opponent. Both guys are on long winning streaks, but it's Gomis who has most of the on-paper advantages here. He's younger. He's 5 inches taller. He's got a 4-inch reach advantage, and he uses that height and length well. He's more experienced as a pro and at the UFC level. His minute-winning skills at distance striking range and in the clinch are much better, in my opinion, and he's fought and beaten the better brand of competition. Silva's fighting at home in Brazil, and he's the more explosive moment winner who has the power advantage. I feel as if Silva needs a finish. Gomis a nightmare to deal with at range. He's fast, he's constantly feigning and trying to pull you into a counter left. His kicks are really fast and accurate, and he's so damn difficult to find. And Silva being so much shorter, he's going to have a hard time closing the distance in the big cage. And if he gets reckless, Gomis is absolutely capable of landing something huge. I didn't like what I saw from Gomis' defensive wrestling and grappling in the 3rd round of the Marshall fight. So if Gene had shown some grappling prowess in previous fights, I'd be confident that he has more than one path to victory. But since I haven't seen evidence of that yet, I'd rate Gomis for now as the better minute winner in not just the striking, but also the clinch and grappling exchanges. I think William's going to win the minutes at range, slow down the output of Silva, and use his length to stay safe on defense and land the more impactful shots at range. I also think the bigger and stronger Gomis can wear on Silva in the clinch. If Silva doesn't find a way to close the distance and land a bomb, I think Gomis frustrates him and wins the minutes. So I'm going to pick Gomis to win this fight by decision, and I have a 1-unit bet on William Jaguar Gomis to win at on the money line at plus 135. So I definitely beat a lot of line movement there. But yeah, I mean, I just think that, Gomis got all the advantages on paper. He's bigger, he's longer, he's taller, he's more experienced overall. He's more experienced in the UFC. And I think that the distance striking numbers that he's putting up at the UFC level are indicative of somebody who is going to be very, very hard to find at distance striking range, especially when you add in the fact that Silva's at this 5-inch reach disadvantage and 4-inch height disadvantage. So William Gomis by decision is the pick here. Yeah, Benito. is saying showboating after beating Weston Wilson is wild. Dude, that is an excellent point. We got Olajuwon saying, let's go Gomi. We got Ruthless Soda Pop saying, oi, Weezy, this card is going to be really good. Lots of great fights throughout the prelims and main card. What fight are you looking forward to the most? Dude, it would have to be the Jack Shore, Joanderson, Brito fight, or the Elves, Brener, Myktybek, Orolbai fight, which we're going to talk about next. Both of those fights, I think, are going to be just total bangers. And then, of course, the main event as well. I want to see how Pantoja does against Steve Erceg. Very interesting matchup right there. Zach Johnson saying, I got Silva by murder and then performing a strange act of cannibalism in the cage. Yeah, dude, Gene Silva's a wild, wild dude. I think he's going to be very popular in the UFC. I love watching Gomi fight when I'm having trouble going to sleep. We got Zach Johnson saying, the French continue to lose my money, Weezy. I'm over it. Got it, man. Understood. We got Olajuwon Dream saying Gomi looks way bigger than Silva. Yeah, and he is. He's just way bigger. We got the MMA groomer in the room saying, I like the Gomi side, but I fear the Brazilian judges. No, I hear you, man. I hear you. That is a big part of this. Benino saying, I want to know which matchmakers Weston Wilson pissed off. Maybe he made a post about fighter pay. That could be, man. That could be. And then ring a ding ding, you guys. JP Taylor with the $10 donation saying, thanks, Weezy. I always appreciate the info and the time it takes you to compile and discuss it with us all. Many thanks. Many thanks to you for the very generous donation to the show, JB. Really appreciate you, man, helping keep the lights on in your Uncle Weezy's studio and keep providing this content for free. But if you really want to support the show, all of you that are watching, check out Probability. The Probability Patreon, available right now at patreon.com/Uncle Weezy. You'll get access to all these phenomenal stats that you see here. The over-under template for every fight, the betting template for every fight, the in-depth UFC and overall career stats for every fight. You want to gain an edge on the books and find out how you really calculate plus EV bets? Join us. Sit right here on the couch next to Brady and Weezy, and we'll take you on a tour through how to find these underpriced bets that'll help you be a long-term winner in this game. Thank you so much for the donation, JP Taylor. Let's move on to this next fight, which is going to be an absolute banger. Elves Brener at plus 207 going up against Myktybek Orolbai, the minus 242 favorite. Fight doesn't go to decision, sitting around minus 110 for this fight. Let's get these stats up here on the screen for you guys. Advanced matchup. And let's start talking about the trends. Elves Brener is on a run right now. He's won his last 5 fights, and he's 3-0 in the UFC thus far, with wins over Zubaira Tukhugov by split decision in his debut as a plus 470 underdog. He then shocked the world, knocking out Guram Kutsteladze in the 3rd round as a plus 475 underdog, and beat short notice replacement Kanan Krzyzewski by first round knockout as a minus 210 favorite back in November of 2023. Elves is a shoot box guy, and he fights like it. He's durable, scrappy, and he pressures on the feet and is very aggressive with his submissions. He's facing off against Myktybek Orolbai, who is 12-1-1 as a pro and is fresh off a UFC debut win over Earl Smedic by 2nd round neck crank. Orolbai's only pro loss came against undefeated Russian Khalid Satuev, who is 13-0 at the moment. And that fight was a straight-up robbery where I scored it 29-28 Orolbai, but 30-27 Orolbai wasn't too far off either. But either way, Orolbai has been dominant as a pro thus far, and he's facing a white-hot Brazilian who's on a 5-fight winning streak in front of a very hostile crowd who brings a war with him every time he steps into that cage. So this is a great fucking fight between two really good fighters. Elves Brener is going to have the overall and UFC experience advantages here. 5 more pro fights, 50 more minutes of pro cage time, 2 more fights at the UFC level, almost 25 more minutes of octagon time. I believe that Elves is going to have the striking advantage in this fight. He's 3-0 to the knockout as a pro, and his striking is held up against really solid UFC competition at distance. He pressures. He has a great chin, so he's willing to take one to give one. He gets you moving backward, stays in your face and he drags you into a war. You have to bring 15 minutes of hard cardio with you when you fight this dude because he's never been finished and he doesn't stop until the bell rings. He's got the submission grappling advantage, in my opinion. I'm not saying Elves is the better all-around grappler, but Orolbai is a dominant wrestler and minute winner, while Elves is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player who's 11-0 to the submission as a professional. He's very aggressive from his back, as evidenced by his 6 wins by armbar, 1 by triangle, 1 by guillotine, and he also has three rear naked chokes to his credit as well. You really have to mind your P's and Q's when you're on the mat with Elves because he will be very aggressive, looking to submit, sweep, or stand up. And the strength of schedule advantage also goes to Brener. Elves has fought the better brand of competition overall. He has regional scene fights against Gabriel Santos and Denis Silva. And 2 of his UFC wins are against high-level opponents like Zubaira Tukhugov and Guram Kutsteladze. Now, for Myktybek Orolbai, he's going to have a 2.5-inch reach advantage in this fight, and he just has this suffocating grappling game. This is what makes Myktybek so dominant. His style is so reminiscent of Khabib Nurmagomedov. Pressure on the feet, back your opponent up to the cage, use your striking to set up the entries on your takedowns, and wrestle exclusively along the cage to eliminate your opponent's ability to effectively go for submissions. If you have the right combination of attributes to make this game plan work, it's extremely effective when it comes to frustrating and breaking your opponent. Myktybek does an excellent job of using his striking to set up the entries on his takedowns, and he chains together his takedown attempts so well. He wrist rides, forces you to your back, lands ground and pound, and then he looks to wrap up the neck. He's 5-0 to the submission in his career, with all of them coming by rear naked choke or neck crank. The most dangerous game plan is the one you know is coming, but you can't stop it, even though you know it's coming. And that's what Myktybek does. Let's see if Elves can stop it. And it really does come down to whether Elves can keep this fight standing long enough to find the kind of big shots he's going to need to catch the judge's eye. Both of these dudes have excellent chins. Neither one has ever been finished as a pro, and both of them are such dominant grapplers that it's hard to see either one being finished. Orolbai's coming back down to 155 pounds, and if he can make that cut without much issue, he's going to be a serious problem for this division. His game reminds me of Rinat Fakhretdinov, serious power on the feet that is even more dangerous due to the threat of the wrestling. I don't think Orolbai is going to fuck off. I think he chains together takedown attempts here along the fence. I think he wears on Elves, avoids the submission, patiently lands ground and pound while looking to advance position and ultimately lock up the rear naked choke. Brener has that dog in him, and he's live to pull off a sub or an attritional KO if Orolbai has nerves or if he adrenaline dumps in front of a hostile crowd. But Orolbai, if he's successful in implementing the game plan he's known for, I think he gets the win and looks minus 300. So the pick is going to be Myktybek Orolbai to win by decision. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Orolbai, sus, says Brandon Gutierrez. What's up, Brandon? Thanks for hanging out, man. We got JP Taylor saying ugly contest goes to a split draw 90% of the time between these two. They are not handsome men. Yeah, that is for sure. Yeah, not a beauty pageant. It is not that, JP Taylor. That's for sure. Zach saying he bet Brener. He got plus 230. That's a good number. And yeah, dude, Brener is live. But if Orolbai gets that that suffocating grappling game going, it's going to be very frustrating for Elves Brener. This fight could have taken place in 3000 BC. Orolbai should be able to control Elves. Seems like BJJ only gets you so far against these Eastern European wrestlers. Yeah, or the Central Asian wrestlers. They don't, they're not impressed by BJJ, and they just kind of they use that cage wrestling, because BJJ doesn't have a wall. They've just a big open mat. It's just so different when you introduce that cage into it. It makes it so much harder, for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu players to get the space that they need in order to get the submission attempts off. Zach couldn't pass that Brener at plus 230 lineup. No, I get it, man. No problem, dude. That Brener has cashed twice already in the UFC as a huge underdog. There's nothing wrong with taking that shot. You think this one goes to I don't think, I'm not betting either way, because the problem is that Brener is a very good finisher. Orolbai, very good finisher. However, neither one of these guys has ever been finished. So I don't want to bet violence here, because you don't want to stand in the way of the durability of both guys. But also, you get the feeling that this fight's going to be an attritional war, and you could see somebody getting finished at some point. So I'm staying away from the time props on this one. Zach thinks it finishes inside the distance. I hear you, man. All right, well, let's move on to this next fight. It's going to be Karolina Kowalkiewicz at plus 330, going up against Iasmin Lucindo at minus 440 or minus 400. Minus 400. There are the stats. So I'm not touching this fight. I think Lucindo should win. I think she should win a decision probably. But she's at a experience disadvantage, which isn't that much. Only 3 fights, about 72 minutes of cage time. But the UFC experience advantage, 13 fights in favor of Karolina, about 170 more minutes of octagon time. Karolina's throwing 16.4 distance strike attempts per minute. You can see that number right here. And she's landing 6.3. So she stays very, very busy. And in women's MMA, volume is very important, because the ability to get knockdowns at this level is just something that you don't see very often. One of the things that my spreadsheet has over here on the right is metrics for every division. And you can see here, knockdowns per 15, knockdown percent. These women in the strawweight division are averaging 0.11 knockdowns per 15 minutes. They land a knockdown on less than 0.2% of the strikes that they land. So volume is very important. Experience is very important. But the problem is that Iasmin Lucindo is 22 years old and Karolina is 38. So if you're betting on the Karolina side, you're betting into, a 16-year age differential here. But everything else, is potentially something that you could see Karolina winning minutes here. Karolina's got 74% takedown defense over a very large sample size, which is 10% better than the divisional average. She gets controlled less than 16% of her UFC career, but has a positive 0.65 grappling efficiency rating, according to the way that I, compute that. She's faced the better brand of competition. She's beaten the better brand of competition, and she's on a 4-fight win streak. So Iasmin Lucindo, I think she wins this fight. I think she wins it by decision by landing the bigger shots, because damage is reigning supreme, and this will be in Brazil. So the crowd's going to be cheering everything that Iasmin does, and you're going to be able to hear crickets when Kowalkiewicz lands. So I'm picking Lucindo by decision, but I think it's I just can't get behind laying minus 400 on Iasmin Lucindo in this spot. So yeah, man, we are going with Iasmin Lucindo to win this fight by decision. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. It's mathematically possible. It's unbelievable. They don't look much alike. So, I'm thinking it's not much of a chance that this is actually her mom. But yeah, old enough to be her mother is definitely sure. Yeah, there you go. Karolina Kowalkiewicz decision, right? So, over-under template. I like the fight goes. That's a trifecta bet at minus 170, ladies and gentlemen. Fight goes is something we gave out. Over 2.5 at minus 205 we gave out on probability. But also, if we look at the betting template, KK by decision is plus 500. And 8 of her 9 UFC wins come by way of decision. Only one loss for Lucindo, and it was by decision as well. So that's 90% of Karolina Kowalkiewicz's win condition here. So it's almost a trifecta bet on the template here. Kowalkiewicz by decision at plus 500. So I think that's how she wins if she does win this fight. And then for Lucindo, It doesn't mind the inside the distance prop at plus 155, but it's definitely way overpriced according to the benchmark. So something to consider there. But let's move on to the next fight. And it is going to be an absolute banger between Jack Tank Shore and Joanderson Brito. We got Shore plus 144, the underdog. Joanderson Brito minus 164 is the favorite. Fight doesn't go to decision at minus 175 for this fight. So yeah, let's take a look at what we have written up here. The trends in this fight. Jack Shore is 17-1 as a professional, and he's 6-1 in the UFC. 4-0 to the KO, 9-1 to the submission, and 4-0 to the decision. So he can win minutes or moments. Jack recently moved up to featherweight and won his first fight in the new weight class against Makwan Amirkhani. That was a second-round submission for Jack as a minus 550 favorite. The only pro loss, it comes against Ricky Simon back in July of 2022. He was a minus 170 favorite in that fight, and he was submitted in the second round by arm triangle after Ricky dropped Jack with a cheeky overhand right. Jack has been a favorite in every single UFC fight so far, but this time he's a plus 140 underdog to the streaking Joanderson Brito, who's fighting in his home country of Brazil and is on a 4-fight winning streak, and he's only lost once in his last 16 fights. Brito had punched his ticket to the UFC with a technical unanimous decision win over Diego Lopez, who's on a run of his own right now. He then lost his UFC debut to Bill Algeo as a minus 155 favorite. Since that fight, Brito has shaved the asses of Andre Fili by first-round KO as a plus 200 underdog. Lucas Alexander by first-round rear naked choke as a minus 380 favorite. Poor Weston Wilson by first-round ground and pound is a minus 1,400 favorite. And finally, Jonathan Pierce by second-round submission as a plus 110 underdog. This is a long flight from Wales to Rio for Jack Shore to fight in front of a hostile crowd against a very dangerous and intimidating opponent fresh off a 1-year layoff for Shore here. Joanderson Brito currently a minus 170 favorite. So Jack Shore has got the overall experience advantage with almost an hour more of cage time. He's got the UFC experience advantage with 2 more fights and 53 more minutes of octagon time. Jack Shore is the better minute winner. He's 4-0 as a pro in decisions, while Brito is more of a finisher at 2-1 in decisions. Jack has a positive 2.1 distance striking differential at range with way above average accuracy and solid defense. He also wins a lot of minutes with his grappling, getting 3.4 takedowns per 15 minutes on 8.5 attempts and out-controlling his opponents 35% to 19%. That has him winning 64% of the control time positions that his fights are in. Jack is a well-rounded mixed martial artist who fights to the weaknesses of his opponents. And if you do have a weak spot, Jack is going to find it and exploit it. It should be noted that Brito has been controlled for 38% of his UFC octagon time thus far. So if Jack can use his cage wrestling to wear on Brito and slow this fight down, we might be able to neutralize his very explosive opponent like we saw JSP and Algeo have some success doing. But Brito is going to have a 1-inch reach advantage here. He's the better finisher. Even though Brito's finish rate isn't much better than Jack's as a professional, it's clear who the more dangerous and explosive fighter is. Jack is finishing really low-level guys, while Brito is flatlining dudes in terrifying fashion and is also choking dudes senseless in grappling exchanges. Brito's 7-1 to both the KO and the submission as a pro, so no matter where the fight goes, you aren't safe from this guy finding moments. The power advantage goes to Joanderson. He's got the death touch. He doesn't just knock dudes out. He does it in scary fashion. Go watch the Chepe Mariscal KO, the Andre Fili KO, the KO over poor Weston Wilson via ground and pound. This dude has heavy hands and he's violent. And Brito is a very capable grappler. He's 7-1 to the submission, very aggressive, and he demonstrated moment-winning ability in the JSP fight and minute-winning ability in the Diego Lopez fight. He can stay safe from submissions and win minutes on top while also using his submission game from the bottom to either finish fights, sweep, or get back up. The strength of schedule, Brito has faced and beaten the more experienced UFC competition with the better win-loss records, and he's always been a featherweight, while Shore in his wins at 135 has had a laughably easy schedule. I love this fight. It's a great measuring stick to see how Jack Shore will fare at 145 against somebody with a pulse. The Amir Khani win is meaningless to me. Now let's see what he can do against somebody with more than an anaconda choke and 4 minutes of gas. Brito is so explosive. He's a finisher. He's not really here to win minutes, even though he has that capability. Brito tries to get you out of there. He's all offense, and the judges love fighters like that. Shore's a well-schooled, well-rounded fighter. He's experienced. He has nice boxing, solid wrestling, good minute and moment winning abilities in the grappling exchanges, and he's got excellent conditioning, and he can fight at a high pace. I think these guys are really well matched skill for skill, but where I think Brito separates himself from Shore is in the moment winning abilities and with the strength of schedule advantage that he has here. Add those factors to the fact that Shore is traveling from Wales to Rio and fighting in front of a hostile crowd, and I think Brito is the one who gets his hand raised here. I don't think Shore is better than Brito in any meaningful ways in this fight. I like Brito to win inside the distance, and the pick is going to be Joanderson Brito to win by second round submission. There we go. All right. We finally get to the main card here. What is going on with you guys in the chat? We got Olajuwon saying Brito inside the distance, played Brito money line and the under 2.5. Agree with both of those plays. Weezy, the consummate professional, instead of falling into the abyss that trolls of that troll's forehead wrinkles, he kindly tells him to go F himself while being cordial and explains why he can't accommodate him. Appreciate you, Patrick. Yeah, it's my show, man. It's my channel. I do it the way that I fucking want to do it. And the people still support me. So appreciate you, man. Well done. Thank you. Do you think you'll ever add round by round stats? I think that would take the stats to the next level. No, I'm not going to do that, Matt. The reason I'm not going to do that is in order to get all the stats from 2013 to present without the round by round breakdowns, that took 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 6 weeks. Now, in order to get 3 rounds of stats from each fight and potentially 5 rounds of stats from 5-round fights, that would take 3 times as long to go through the UFC history. Now, of course, a lot of fights would just be 1 round, so it would be the same information. But in order to perform that task, it would take a couple of months. And, frankly, I only get 3 weeks off a year, and even those weeks that we get off during the year between fights, a lot of times, that needs to be done, spent doing other stuff behind the scenes. So, yeah. But I know my guy Monk Maddox is doing that as we speak. I think he's about halfway through the project, and he's getting the round by round data literally since UFC 1. Round by round data all the way up to present, and I know he's about halfway done with it right now. Let's see. I'm leaning Shore. Being in Brazil has me staying away, though. Shore is going to get fucked up here. You can't get chinned by Simon, then fight Brito at 145. Moment winning is greater than minute winning because one moment wins multiple minutes, and that is what we are finding out these days, Matt, is that minute winning can be important if you're dominant at it. Like Myktybek Orolbai, for instance, like the way that he wins minutes is so dominant. He sticks to you like glue. But yeah, dude, if you're landing that one big shot and then losing the other 4.5 minutes of the round, a lot of times that's enough to get it on the judges' scorecard. So you're absolutely right about that, Matt. Let's move on to the main card here. We got Paul Craig facing off against Caio Borjas. Paul Craig is a plus 470 underdog. Borjas a minus 645 favorite. The fight doesn't go to decision for this fight at minus 190 here. So the trends. Paul Craig recently moved down to 185 pounds from 205. He's 1-1 thus far at middleweight with a win over Andre Muniz by second round ground and pound knockout as a plus 185 underdog, and a third round loss against Brendan Allen as a plus 330 underdog in a 5-round main event. Paul has lost 3 of his last 4 fights, but he's still a very dangerous opponent. One mistake on the ground against this guy can cost you the fight. Prior to losing 3 of 4, Paul was on a 6-fight unbeaten streak where he went 5 wins, 0 losses, and a draw, with all 5 wins coming by first or second round finish. Caio Borjas has been a very efficient minute winner thus far in the UFC. He's 5-0 so far, with 4 of those 5 wins coming by unanimous decision. Caio's been a favorite in every UFC fight thus far, with the exception of his debut where he was plus 100 against Omar Gadziev. Caio is a dependable minute winner who can fight to the weakness of his opponent. Caio backers have been cashing tickets with very little resistance, so let's see if he can keep up this impressive 14-fight winning streak he's been on in his home country of Brazil. But Paul Craig is going to be 5 inches taller on paper, but keep in mind, Caio lies about his height. He's listed at 5'10", but and he's still listed at 5'10" on UFC. Let me just make sure that they haven't caught him in this lie yet and made him change his height. No, they're still listing him at 5'10". It's hilarious, dude. This guy's 6'2" easily, but 5 inches taller on paper for Paul Craig. He's got a 1-inch reach advantage here. Paul Craig's got the pro experience advantage with 8 more fights and 1.5 more years as a professional. He's also got the UFC experience advantage with 12 more fights, 70 more minutes of octagon time. Paul Craig is the better moment winner. He's got a 100% finish rate in 17 pro wins. He's got 13 submissions and 4 knockouts. Paul knows who he is. He's not a grinder. He doesn't spam takedowns and lay and pray. He isn't going to try to pick you apart at range on his way to a decision. Paul is going to try to find the moment that ends the fight. Paul is a minute loser wherever the fight goes, but on the feet, he throws huge kicks that need to be respected. And if you go into his guard on the ground, you'd better be very confident in your submission defense. The strength of schedule advantage also goes to Paul. 12 more fights at the UFC level, so he's definitely fought the better brand of competition over both of their pro careers. And my metrics favor Craig slightly as well overall and in his UFC wins. Caio Borjas is 5 years younger. He's got the minute winning advantage. He's a very smart fighter, and he has multiple paths to victory. He's 4-0 to both the knockout and the submission, and he's 7-1 to the decision as a pro. Where Caio really sets himself apart is in his ability to find the weakness of his opponent and exploit it. He has a grappling advantages. If he has a grappling advantage, you can count on Caio going for takedowns, getting them, and playing an efficient position over submission approach that wears on his opponents and doesn't allow them to inflict damage. Caio has never been dropped in the UFC, and he's never been finished as a professional. He always finds ways to get the job done and get his hand raised in the end. And the grappling efficiency, that goes to Caio Borjas. He gets 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. Paul Craig gets 1.8. However, and you could see this here, you see this big green block here in the control time stats and grappling efficiency on the Caio side. And you see a lot of yellow and red here on the Paul Craig side, and that's because Caio's getting his takedowns at 60%. Craig only gets them at 22.5%. Caio's winning 82% of the control time positions in his fights, while Craig is only winning 26%. So Craig's happy to lose minutes trying to set up his submission attempts, and Caio does the opposite. He wins minutes while his opponents absorb ground and pound and expend energy trying to get back up. So this is an awesome clash of styles here between the efficient minute winning of Borjas up against the opportunistic moment winning of the Bear Jew, Paul Craig. No matter how big of an underdog Paul Craig is, you have to keep in mind how many hyped and undefeated fighters he's beaten already in the UFC. Magomed Ankalaev would still be undefeated as a pro today if it wasn't for Paul Craig. Up until the Alex Pereira fight, Jamal Hill's only UFC loss was against, you guessed it, Paul Craig. Andre Muniz was 5-1 in the UFC when Paul Craig finished him with ground and pound, a former Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. So there's nothing wrong with taking a dog shot on Paul Craig in any situation. He's the epitome of a guy who loses fights right up until he wins them. He's taller, he's longer, he's more experienced overall and in the UFC. He's fought and beaten the more experienced brand of UFC competition with the better win-loss records. Caio's fighting at home in Brazil. He's done an excellent job of using his counter-heavy striking style combined with his offensive wrestling, top control, and ground and pound to win minutes and bank rounds. And I think that Kyle should be the better minute winner everywhere in this fight. Kyle's not running away with fights, though. He kind of lives in the margins, and fighters like that are dangerous to lay juice on. You might cash the bet, but going into a close decision, holding a minus 600 money line ticket is going to pucker up that butthole of yours good and tight. So both of these guys are excellent grapplers and not very dangerous on the feet. Like I said earlier, it's a clash of styles between a moment winner in Craig and a minute winner in Bohio. And since the minute winner is a Damian Maia Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, I think he can stay safe from the submissions and win the minutes of this fight on his way to a decision. So the pick is Caio Bohio by decision. There we go. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Kyle wins inside the distance. He played the under 2.5, did Olajuwon Dream. Hang on just a sec. We got, but how did that injury occur saying Craig destroyed Hill? Yeah, I mean, like he got the overhook on that arm and he just bent it the wrong way, you know. Injury win. Oh, well. I think offensively, Craig is the better moment winner, but defensively, he's way more prone to losing moments too. No, that's an excellent point because Craig has been finished in almost all of his losses, while Caio Bohio has never been finished. So that's an excellent point. I'm not saying it's not a valid win, but if his elbow doesn't dislocate, Hill wins that fight 99 times out of 100. It's just like Yair versus Ortega. Yeah, you saw what happened there. Shoulder dislocation. His elbow dislocated from the triangle arm bar, and then he beat 7 shades of shit out of him. True. You could say that if this didn't happen every single fight, though, Craig got him in a sub and dislocated his arm from it. Don't bet against Paul Craig. No one should be minus 645 against him. He literally reaped his elbow at the perfect angle, and it dislocated. Hill never tapped, never went unconscious. It was a freakish injury. He'll be minus 1,000 against Craig today. He'd be a big favorite. I don't know about minus 1,000, but he'd be a big-ass favorite for sure. All right, you guys, let's move on to the next fight, which is going to be Michel Pereira at minus 600 going up against Ihor Potieria, the plus 425 underdog. Fight doesn't go to decision here at minus 500 for this fight. There we go. We got the stats up for you guys. Let me get another sip of this coffee. And talk about the trends. Michel Pereira is a hot fighter right now. He's on a 7-fight winning streak, and he's 8-2 thus far in the UFC. Michel moved up to middleweight after being forced up there by the UFC brass after he cratered a major pay-per-view by missing weight in the Stephen Thompson fight, which allowed Wonder Boy to refuse the fight. But the joke's on the middleweight division now because Michel Pereira is their problem now, and he has been a problem thus far. 2 fights, 2 brutal ass shavings. He disposed of Andre Petrosky in 66 seconds as a minus 205 favorite after dropping him with the first straight right hand that he threw, and then he finished him with ground and pound. He then shaved Michel Oleksiejczyk's ass as a minus 150 favorite by kicking, punching, and kneeing the shit out of his body, and then finishing him with a rear naked choke in 61 seconds. Prior to moving up to middleweight, Pereira was on a 5-fight winning streak at welterweight, so his elusive stick-and-move style with big explosive attacks is working for him, and now that he's at middleweight, he's flashing power, and that makes him a scary opponent. He's going to be facing Ihor Potieria, who is stepping in on about 3 weeks' notice for Mahmoud Muradov in this fight, and making the long trip to Brazil and making the cut down to 185 pounds as well. A lot of narrative issues standing in the way of Ihor giving his best performance. Added to the fact that let's just say Ihor isn't the most popular guy in Brazil right now after the Shogun fight. Ihor is 2-3 in the UFC right now, and this will be his second fight at middleweight in the UFC. The first was against Robert Bryczek, which Ihor won by unanimous decision, but Ihor was unable to make weight in that fight. So seeing how Ihor looks on the scales for this short notice fight that has a long flight attached to it will be very important information to consider. His UFC wins over the rotting corpse of Shogun Hua and the debuting Robert Brichek. So it's hard to gauge where Ihor is in the grand scheme of things right now because he's still very young at only 27 years old. And he has a lot of pro experience under his belt. And his recent performances against Bellato and Brichek show a ton of improvement to his all-around game and conditioning and heart. So Ihor is a massive plus 425 underdog to Michel Pereira, the minus 600 favorite. Pereira's got the pro experience advantage. He's got 18 more professional fights, almost 300 more minutes of cage time. And he's got 5 more UFC fights and over an hour more in the UFC octagon. Pereira is very durable. He's only been finished twice in 11 pro losses, and he's never been finished in 10 UFC fights, despite the fact that he's faced plenty of big hitters. Ihor has been knocked out in all 3 of his UFC losses and in 4 of 5 pro losses. The distance striking advantage is in his favor. Ihor actually has really good distance striking metrics thus far, but Michel spends 82% of his UFC octagon time at distance striking range, and he's constantly winning minutes and moments there. He's extremely elusive and hard to hit. He only absorbs 3.7 distance strikes per minute. That's 0.5 less than the divisional average. And his defense is just under 62%, which is also above average for the division. Pereira has never been knocked down or out in the UFC, and he's landed 3 knockdowns of his own, and he's 2-0 to the KO in his UFC career as well. So he's also got the strength of schedule advantage. Michel has fought and beaten the more experienced brand of UFC competition with the better win-loss ratios, but it's important to note that Pereira fought mostly at 205 pounds, and Michel Pereira fought mostly at 170 pounds. So that needs to be taken into account here. Now, Pereira, 2.5 years younger, 2 inches taller, 2-inch reach advantage. So nice measurables advantages here for the former 205er who's facing the former welterweight. And Ihor is the bigger dude who has fought the bigger and more powerful opponents, and he's down for a scrap. Michel is technical, flashy, and athletic. Ihor is dirty, not technical. He hits hard, and he forces a killer-be-killed scrap. His style might be perfect to bring the pressure and power needed to beat an opponent like Pereira. So Michel's a hot fighter right now, and Pereira is on short notice fighting in front of a hostile crowd. So it's natural that Michel's money line is juiced to the tits at minus 600. He's looked so good, and now that the power is showing and the minute-winning capabilities at distance have already been demonstrated, it's hard to imagine anyone beating this guy, especially a fighter like Ihor that relies on big shots in moments when Pereira is so defensively responsible. I think a cheeky look for this fight is to take Pereira by decision. Because of his 2 recent finishes, the line is juiced. But prior to that, Pereira went to decision in 4 straight fights. And Pereira just took Robert Brichek to decision, a guy who was on a 5-fight first-round winning streak at the time. And the fight doesn't go to decision for that fight with something absurd like minus 600. I think Michel gets the job done here. I think the short notice, the flight, the weight cut, and the extremely hostile crowd are going to be too many added distractions for Pereira, because finding a way to figure out the puzzle that is Michel Pereira is difficult enough on its own in a small cage and at the apex. I think Michel wins here, and I'll go out on a limb and say it goes the distance. So I'm going to pick Michel Pereira to win this fight by decision. Wow. You guys, like, I'm hearing like this background noise, and I think it's like pouring here. Hang on just a sec. Let me look. Oh, yeah. Jesus. It is raining so hard right here in Chicago right now. I could actually hear it while I was talking, and I'm like, oh my God, is this crazy? So anyway, you guys, Michel Pereira by decision is the pick in this fight. All right, let's see here. Okay. Okay, DGen for life is in the room saying, oi, Ihor looked pretty good lately. Yeah, he did, man. JP saying, I know the model and a lot of you like the over with Ihor and Pereira. I don't see it because of Ihor and the way he fights. Ihor will pressure hard. Yeah, my point there, JP, is just it's about price, and if we look at it here, let's look at the model, because only 1 of 5 fights for Pereira has went over 2.5 rounds, but 7 of 10 for Michel Pereira. So when you look at that overall in the aggregate, it's 53% of their combined 15 UFC fights have went over that 2.5 mark, but you're getting plus 280. That's a 26% implied probability. So it's literally half the implied probability of the prior performance. In addition, we just saw Ihor Pereira go 15 minutes with Robert Britchek, a guy who coming into that fight had finished 5 straight fights in the first round by knockout. So all I'm saying is that you could take a very small amount of money and put it on a plus 400 fight goes, a plus 280 over 2.5. And yeah, it might not cash. Yeah, you might look like a moron. Yeah, somebody might get flatlined in the first 60 seconds. But if this fight gets out of the first round, I think it's going to cruise all the way to decision. So that's an interesting way to look at it. And these obviously when you got a fight doesn't go at minus 600, the bookies are on to violence. They're saying that they don't want your money on that. They're not giving you any margin for error there. So let's see. And Olajuwon saying he's been playing the contrarian overs lately and has been working well. Cashed over 1.5s on Peak, Bo Nickel, and Span. Yeah, that works, man. And then let's see. Ihor can take a lot of head strikes, but Pereira's been killing to the body, and Ihor looks soft to the body. Yup. Let's see here. And let's see. Light rain here in Manitoba, says Olajuwon, and Matt R says that's all the ladies flooding Weezy. I don't think that's the case, man. It was really just pouring, and then it already stopped. And Cuban Assassin saying, what it do, Weezy? Hopefully Anthony Bumhart gets sent to retirement. Well, he might get sent there, man, for sure. Let's see. The way I played it, 1 unit spread across the overs and fight goes to decision. Just need the over 1.5 to hit to make money back, and then free roll on over 2.5 and fight goes to decision. That's not a bad way to play it. And like I say, man, I think if it gets out of the first, it's going to go all the way, because I think both of these guys are very front loaded in terms of how they finish fights. Let's see. Scottsdale, Arizona, watching Weezy. Ayo, what's up? Yes, Freak. Good to have you hanging out in here, man. And let's get on to this next fight, as we have got, it's the Smitty Petrino fight. Let me get the banner up here for you guys. Anthony Smith plus 400. Petrino minus 550. Fight doesn't go to decision here at minus 210. So I didn't do as much research on the main card because I know who these fighters are and because the lines are just blown out. So, I mean, I lose interest in a fight when I lose all my money-making potential. And Anthony Smith, 56 professional fights, you guys. 415 minutes of professional cage time. This guy has lost 19 fights. And in those 19 losses, despite being an incredibly durable guy with no quit in him, he's been finished 15 times in those 19 losses. So Anthony Smith is not great at winning minutes. He gets his ass beaten. He Homer Simpsons dudes, and then he pulls fights out of his ass. I mean, you could see it here, He's 20-11 to the knockout. Great record. 14-4 to the submission. But in decisions, he's got a losing record. He's not a minute winner. If he's not finding those finishes, he doesn't really have a skill set that'll go out there and allow him to win minutes on the feet and allow him to be able to mix in some wrestling and win some minutes with some top control and ground and pound. He's just kind of there waiting for the moment. And the moment oftentimes doesn't come. And oftentimes, a lot recently, the moment comes for his opponent. So the wins for Anthony Smith, the last 2 wins come against Ryan Spann, who has got a negative fight IQ and is one of the dumbest fighters to ever set foot in the cage. And I'm one of the dumbest gamblers for putting him in a parlay last week. Thank God I only lost 1 unit on Ryan Spann, because he should have absolutely destroyed that fraud Guskov. He should have wrestled him from minute 1, and he didn't wrestle at all in the second round. Showed piss poor fight IQ, but I think those are the guys that Smitty can beat, because like it's not like Ryan Spann has ever won a minute in a fight either. He can barely win a decision in his own right. He counts on the finish. If he doesn't find it, he quits. And those are the guys that Smitty's beating. The last 4 wins, 2 against Ryan Spann, 1 against another guy with one of the worst fight IQs in the history of the sport, Jimmy Crute, complete dumbass, and then Devin Clark before that. So I don't know what I'm looking for here on the Smitty side. I just don't. The expectations are just so low for me. And then on the Petrino side, what I like about Petrino is that he's averaging 4.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. He's spending more than half of his cage time in control time positions, and he's winning over 81% of those control time positions. So once again, this is like the fight that we saw 2 fights ago, where you got one guy over here with real grappling efficiency and a guy over here who just loses minutes nonstop in the grappling exchanges. So I think Petrino's the more powerful striker at range. I think he's the more dangerous moment winner at range. I think if he ever doesn't like how this fight is going on the feet, he can take down Anthony Smith whenever he feels like it and lay on top of him and work clock and land ground and pound. I'm going to pick Vitor Petrino. I think he's going to knock out Anthony Smith in the 2nd round. So we're going to go Vitor Petrino by KO. Round number 2 over Anthony Lionheart Smith. Petrino called out Smith after the last win, and Smith has obliged and decided to go all the way to Brazil to fight this very scary young fighter who's undefeated as a professional. But that's Anthony Smith. He's never going to walk. He's never going to walk away from a fight. Never going to back down. Guy's ready to go at any time, and he's one of the most tenured professionals in the UFC right now with 56 professional fights, I believe, right? 56 professional fights. So Anthony Lionheart Smith is a legend, but I do have Vitor Petrino winning this fight inside the distance. All right. So, under 2.5 for Lajuan Dream, Petrino inside the distance, but I can also see Smith pulling out a greasy decision. Sprinkle it at plus 1,000 as a hedge for the under. Not bad. He's not good at much, to be honest. He is good at exposing frauds. That's about it. And he beats washed fighters occasionally. And talk about frauds. I mean, Jimmy Crute, Ryan Spann. Boy. Hit that thumbs up for your Uncle Weezy here. Appreciate you. Yes, Freak. Thanks for hanging out, man. And hit that subscribe button and consider joining that Patreon for these phenomenal probability stats with the advanced matchup template, the over-under template with every over-under bet and all the analytics, the betting template with all of your analytics for knockout, submission, decision, inside the distance bets. Really great analytical tools that not only will help you be a better gambler, but will help your Uncle Weezy make a little bit of money for providing all of this content to you guys on YouTube. So appreciate anybody that supports the work. But if you can't afford to financially support the work, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and leave me a comment down below. All right. Round by round stats would have helped for Spann analysis. Petrino is a much better wrestler. It has better cardio as well. Yes, for sure. Without question, man. JP Taylor says it's crazy how long a career Smith has had with such terrible wrestling throughout. Yes, he can't wrestle at all, man. Smith round 3 plus 3,000 could be interesting. Oh, man, that's not a bad look, Olajuwon. And DGen for Life saying, Jimmy Crute has skills. He just doesn't seem to have the heart for it. Good athlete, maybe not the best fighter. Yeah, he's a pretty good athlete, but he is a good fighter. It's just that if you make bad decisions in the cage, if you can't see yourself for what your skills are, if you don't know who you are as a fighter, you're never going to know what game plan to walk into a fight with against a particular opponent. And I mean, like when Jimmy Crute was fighting Jamal Hill, the fact that he didn't shoot a takedown in the first 5 seconds of that fight just shows that the guy has no idea who he is. He has no idea who his opponent is. And he has no idea how to go in there and prolong his career by finding the easiest path to victory. That's something that people have to do. You can't take a lot of damage in this sport if you want to have a long career in it. And you have to build up your skill set so that you always have the opportunity to fight to the weakness of your opponents. And that's something that stupid fighters never do. And Jimmy Crute is a very stupid fighter. I mean, like the Jamal Hill fight, some of the worst fight IQ I've ever seen. And then even worse in the Anthony Smith fight, even fucking worse. So Crute should have retired, absolutely should have retired, and he should not coach, because if that dude coaches, he's going to be like Danny Castillo, just giving the worst fucking coaching advice that you could possibly give. So yeah, man. I bet Jacoby and Rob Wilkinson beat the fuck out of Smith in camp. Yeah. Clint mentioned it on Monday, except I think he got plus 5,000. Yeah. No, Jimmy Crute just believes in his striking. Yeah. And other people believe, that the rapture is going to be tomorrow and that they're just going to be lifted up to heaven while a bunch of people are going to be left behind. And the rapture is not going to be tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. It's not going to be today either, and it won't be the day after. So, you can't just believe in something that isn't true, especially not if you don't want to get knocked out in fights and wake up looking at the lights. But let's move on to the next fight here, as it is the co-main event. Jonathan Martinez, minus 142. The King of Rio, Jose Aldo, plus 122. Let me get the stats. And the fight doesn't go to decision, plus 170 here. So the bookies definitely see this one going to decision. I'm not gonna do a long breakdown on this fight. This is a striker versus striker matchup. Both of these guys are fairly low volume. Martinez a little more accurate at distance, a little bit more power at distance. Both of these guys are pretty defensively responsible. Both of these guys are the same height and reach pretty much. Southpaw versus orthodox. When it's southpaw versus orthodox, I want the guy that throws more kicks. That's Jonathan Martinez. I usually want the younger fighter. Jonathan Martinez is 7.5 years younger. And Jose Aldo, the narrative backbone of this fight is what's keeping me away from it, because I don't think Jose Aldo is showing up to put on a career best performance here. They called him to save this card. He hasn't been on this card for more than a month. He's 37 years old, and he's got a lot of fight years, 39 fights, 471 minutes in the pro cage. And he hasn't had a mixed martial arts fight in a year and 8 months. So I like the kickboxer over the boxer, and Aldo is primarily a boxer right now. I like Martinez's kicks to be able to kind of control range. And at this point, I actually think Jonathan Martinez is the more efficient grappler on paper. And the strength to schedule advantage firmly in favor of Jose Aldo, of course. So this is going to be a step up, and Jonathan Martinez is going to be in front of a very hostile crowd in Rio de Janeiro. But there's a very good possibility, in my opinion, which is just an opinion and I can't prove it, but it's what's keeping me away from this fight, that Jose Aldo is showing up for not just a check, but a giant check. Like, I think they drove a truckload of money up to his house and said, you got one more fight on your contract. We need to save this UFC 301 card because we put all the best Brazilians on UFC 300. And if we don't get one big legendary name on this main card pay-per-view, it's going to be a disaster. And that's why I'm picking Jonathan Martinez by decision. I mean, I just have to have too much belief that Aldo is going to be the fighter that he used to be after a year and 8 months layoff, and after the fact he's already been inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame and is already retired. So Jonathan Martinez by decision. Is my money getting anywhere near this fight? Absolutely not. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Juice to the gills and pulls this off, man. That would be hilarious, dude. We got Simone Maheta in the room saying Uncle is the best. Truly appreciate you, Simone. Thank you for hanging out here. We got Olajuwon Dream saying, listen to Santino on Olivas podcast. Convinced me to put 1 unit on Aldo. Yeah, they're not going to convince me to put any money on anybody in this fight. I'm just staying away. And that's the great thing about a 14-fight card. You're going to find some fights where you're just like, no, thanks. No, I'm not doing it. Also, Aldo too good at leg kick defense and way better hands. Remember, this is an opposite stance fight. Martinez is a southpaw, and Aldo's a orthodox fighter, Matt. So we're not going to see as many leg attacks in this fight. But he does have, I mean, Aldo's always checking leg kicks. So that's a great point. Better hands, I agree with that too. I actually think the only thing Aldo needs to be careful with is the knees from Martinez. I think the kicks too, but those step-in knees from Martinez are a great weapon as well. We got Nasty Bertrude saying, I just don't trust Aldo's volume here. And Martinez isn't a high-volume guy either. We could see it right here in the chat in the stats, you guys. 10.7 distance strike attempts for Jonathan Martinez at distance and 9.5 for Aldo. So it's both below average for the division, but Martinez just a little more volume on at distance than Aldo. But I think they're both low volume. Aldo definitely looks to counter a lot, but I think the reason Martinez is below average volume is because he throws more kicks and those require more energy. I really wish it was Aldo Cruz. I think that would have been a good, like it was supposed to be, but I still like to see that fight at some point. Matt saying Cruz is done. I have action on one fight only and on this card, and it's looking more like it's staying that way. I hear you, JP. No, we will. Martinez attacks the inside leg kicks just as much as the outside, and he can kick from both legs, lead or rear. Okay. Yeah, I just, you just don't see as many leg attacks from the opposite stance traditionally over the aggregate as you do when people are in the same stance. But we'll see, because Martinez does throw a lot of kicks. That's really more, his offense comes more from the kicks than it does from the hands. He throws a lot of leg kicks for sure. But 45 of you hanging out here live for a special afternoon edition of Just a Tip with your Uncle Weezy. Smash that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, leave me a comment down below, and please consider joining the Patreon so you can get access to these awesome probability stats. And that brings us to the main event of the evening. Alexander, the Cannibal Pantoja, going up against Steve Erceg. Pantoja minus 181, Erceg plus 156. Fight doesn't go to decision for this fight, is at minus 150. Yeah, this is going to be a great fight. Erceg is a great prospect. 12-1 as a professional, 13 pro fights, 115 minutes of pro cage time. So he's a fairly experienced guy. 3 fights at the UFC level already, 3-0. Great performances in all 3 of those fights. Solid striking, great size for the division, dependable chin and durability, really good back takes and the ability to be able to win minutes and moments with his grappling attacks. But shout out to my guy, John Stargarian, who pointed this out on Twitter. Just remember that the combined records of these guys' opponents, Steve Erceg's 3 opponents in the UFC have a combined record of 10 wins and 11 losses. And Alexander Pantoja's opponents in the UFC have a combined record of 85 wins and 58 losses. The guys that he's beating, 62-47, with a 1.3 win-to-loss ratio and 10 UFC fights apiece. So Pantoja, I think, can match Erceg everywhere. He throws more volume. And what Pantoja really excels at is durability and the ability to eat the opponent's best shots, which kind of create chaotic moments in the fight. And Pantoja doesn't attempt a ton of takedowns for the division, but he gets an above average amount of takedowns because he's very high percentage on them. He outcontrols his opponents 30% to 13%, but he attempts about only 40% of the total takedowns, but he gets more than half. So very efficient grappling numbers on the ground for Alexander Pantoja. He's only been knocked down once in 14 professional fights, and I don't think anybody is ever knocking this guy down or out. And I found something. Now, I know that some of you guys are on Erceg. I know that some of you guys are on Pantoja. I'm on the Pantoja side here. I am just not getting in the way of the experience advantage, the massive levels advantage that's going on here. The fact that we've seen Pantoja perform at a really high level for a very long period of time right now, and it doesn't look like there's any sign of slowing down. To ask Steve Erceg in his 4th UFC fight to travel to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and beat Alexander Pantoja in a 5-round fight when this guy has never even seen a 4th round in his career is just a tremendously huge ask. But if you're on that Steve Erceg money line at plus 157, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? He's not finishing Alexander Pantoja. They don't let you bring a gun in there. They don't let you bring a knife in there. They don't let you bring a shovel so that you can kill the dude and then dig a hole in the canvas and bury him there. He's only winning by decision. Nobody's ever finished Alexander Pantoja. And look at the finishers that he's fought. The 157 money line for Steve Erceg is a 39% implied probability. You can get the decision prop right now, I believe. I wonder, let me see. Let me look where the decision prop is on Bet Rivers for Erceg. 475. I think he's plus 500 someplace else. Let me see here. MMA, UFC 301. Erceg by points is plus 550. Are you kidding me? Dude. Yeah, man, that's a great line. That's a 15% implied probability. I mean, that you're getting it at like a 60% price reduction for 100% of Steve Erceg's win condition. He's not finishing Alexander Pantoja. So if you disagree with me and you think that Erceg is winning, don't bet his money line at plus 157. Bet his decision prop at plus 550. It'll take, in order to win the same amount of money, you can invest literally 25% of the original investment to win the same amount of money. So don't do that. Erceg by decision is his only path. But I think that Pantoja's winning by decision. That 300 isn't there anymore. But when I was on Half the Battle this week with my guy Dan Levy, he had his buddy Cody Durden on, and Cody trains at ATT in Georgia, but he goes down to the Coconut Creek location and spars there a lot. And he spars a lot of rounds with Alexander Pantoja. And he said that this fight is a mismatch, but it's not priced like one, and that he thinks that Pantoja is going to go in there and finish this dude in the first or second round. So even though I'm picking Alexander Pantoja by decision in this spot, I just think it's too much of a step up here for Erceg. I do love the Pantoja money line at minus 182. I'm very confident that he gets the job done here and moves on and gets his second straight title defense here, and then finds an opponent that's a little bit hotter right now than what Erceg is. So the pick is Alexander the Cannibal Pantoja by decision. And let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. My guy Kiwi Brew in the room saying it is the early AM right now down under, but it is good to see you hanging out in here, Kiwi. Appreciate you. Oh yeah, he said he beat Giannis with inside leg kicks. Yeah, Giannis is a boxer with a lot of heavy pressure on that lead leg, and that's how Aldo's been fighting lately as well. Played Pantoja money line minus 210, Pantoja sub plus 260, and the under 4.5 at minus 145. Kind of want to play Pantoja 3-4-5 as well. Fade Erceg's unknown 5-round cardio. Erceg skipped the gatekeeper, Alex Perez. This is a huge step up. It is, man. Pantoja should be minus 250 in my opinion. I'm right there with you, dude. I couldn't believe Pantoja went from minus 275 to minus 188. A lot of people are on Erceg, and I get it. Watch the tape on him. He's great everywhere. You don't see any holes in his game, but the reason you don't see them, it doesn't mean that they're not there, because he just hasn't fought anybody of Pantoja's level yet. We got Andrew G in the room. We got Olajuwon Dream in the room. We got Matt R saying it's disrespectful. Like he's styled on Schnell. Who doesn't style on Schnell? I know, man. Pantoja's going to eat this man alive. Would Schnell have won if he didn't get KO'd? No, I don't think so, dude. No, he was losing that fight up to that point. No shovel. There goes my Erceg ticket. Yeah, dude. They don't let you bring the shovel in there, man, anymore. Not anymore. Maybe in the old days, you know. We got Andrew Shane saying, wow. Elijah wanted JP. Oh, come on. Stop it. Stop it. Nasty Bertrude saying, what if Erceg stuffs the takedowns, though? You know, that'll be interesting because it's going to be difficult for Pantoja to close a little bit of distance here because Erceg is so tall and long. But the problem is that Cannibal can close distance because he can take so much punishment. It's so hard to knock this guy down or out that he can depend on his chin to wind up making dirty striking exchanges where he winds up coming out on top. But I don't think he's going to stuff these takedowns. I think Pantoja is going to get his back and out grapple him. I was looking at the Erceg decision as a hedge. Yep. Comparing an injury to someone getting KO'd unconscious, you two are casuals and low IQ ones at that. Public seems to think this goes all 5 by the movement on the lines. Yes. Durden said Pantoja hits very, very hard. Yes, he does. Yeah. And we got my guy DFS by the numbers is in the room saying, "Oh, what is up, Brady?" Brady and I did probability last night. Link in the description of this video. Timestamps ready to go. The hottest new show on the internet. Join us. Join the probability Patreon, the probability Dub Club. It's ready to go. Join us and be a plus EV better with a long-term profitable betting record. We're going to go hard. We got Olajuwon saying, have you spelt one name right? We got Paul Vivret in the room saying, Weezy, I'm definitely on Pantoja. I know all about the 0 finish losses for Pantoja, but I hear a lot of the Erceg people saying Erceg KO. Thoughts? I would be shocked, Paul. And I would never, ever, Paul, say that nothing's like that. There's no chance that anything can happen. This is MMA. Crazy shit happens. You know, Kamaru Usman loses by 5th round head kick. You know, Jiri Prochaska gets a 5th round rear naked choke 23 and a half minutes into a fight against Glover Teixeira. Crazy shit happens in the UFC, but I just can't picture what a knockout against Alexander Pantoja looks like. Look at some of the shots that he was eating in the Moreno fight. I mean, like, this guy has got one of the best chins. Let's see here. I believe Erceg is the best wrestler Alexander has faced. Really? The best wrestler? Has he faced Joe Benavidez? Askar Askarov? Brandon Moreno? Dustin Ortiz? Alex Perez is a solid wrestler, but he never did face the guy that I mentioned. I thought he had faced that guy. But anyway, yeah, no, I mean, I don't think, I mean, Erceg's from Australia. I don't think he's a better wrestler than Alexander Pantoja. I don't know, man. You might be right, though. You might be right. Erceg a lot bigger. Weezy, watch out. Yes, he is. He's very big. I think Erceg can win anywhere the fight goes. Wow, okay. Let's see. All right, you guys, we're done. We finished all these fights. Let's click these and let's go to the Bootsy Collins Memorial Dogs Are Barking Pick of the Week. There are some plus money spots that are solid. If you like Erceg, bet him by decision. Are you on the Aldo side? Anthony Smith, probably not. Paterier, probably not. Craig, probably not. Jack Shore, not for me. Kowalkiewicz by decision at plus 500 or better, I think could be a small stab. Brener is a live underdog against anybody if he drags that guy into his style of fight, that chaotic shoot-to-box style. But this week's Bootsy Collins Memorial Dogs Are Barking Pick of the Week is going to be the William Gomis money line at plus 102. I got it at plus 135 when I was writing these fights up. Loved that spot. I think Gomis is going to frustrate him at range. I think the size advantage and the length advantage that Gomis has is going to be significant. I think the experience advantage and the high-level opponents that Gomis has faced in comparison to Gene Silva is going to be a big advantage, and I absolutely love William Gomis' distance striking. I like him to win this fight, win it flat out. Might be difficult if it gets to the judges because Gene Silva is clearly the guy that they're probably going to be backing. But I do think that William Gomis is the better fighter, and I love getting him at plus money here. So William Gomis plus 102 is going to be your Bootsy Collins Memorial Dogs Are Barking pick of the week, which leaves us with only one order of business, and that is going to be Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. You guys help me out in the chat. I've got 3 candidates for you guys. And tell me who you would pick between Joanderson Brito, Alexander Pantoja, and Myktybek Orolbai. Who do you like to shave ass this week? And I will let you know who I have as Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. We hit it last week. Jonathan Denise. There was never a doubt. Don't listen to the haters. There was never a doubt. Okay, get that through your heads. But Jonathan Denise gets it done. I don't know how many weeks of a winning streak we're on here, but it's several. It's at least 6, I think. We've been hot with the ass shaving of the week, and I'm looking to stay that way. And let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Olajuwon Dream saying, great show, Weezy. Appreciate you, man. We've got, Erceg has prepared for 5 rounders before, but they both finished in the first. So we're going to have to see, how he looks in rounds 4 and 5 here. Andrew G says, thanks. Peace out, Weezy in chat. We got Gomi almost down to a pick'em now. Yeah. Paul is saying that Pantoja should be the ass shaving of the week. JP Taylor is saying this, it should be Mauricio Ruffy, who I am picking to win and win violently. So I think that that's not a bad play either, JP. Olajuwon's going to go with Pantoja. We got Vitek is saying that Brito, because he's going to get up and do something. We got Roshi in the room saying Brito is the ass shaving. Andrew G saying Brito or Ruffy. And Olajuwon was actually going to pick Ruffy as well. We got Zach saying Brito. And we got Pickle Kush saying, give me that hot ass shaving. We got Jester saying Pantoja. And he's saying Robert Saladino, my guy from New York, saying Paul Craig will get a good shave on Saturday. I tend to agree with you there, but I don't want to, Kyle Bahaio's minus 625 here on the money line, so I don't want to make that the ass shaving of the week. But what I am going to go with is I'm going to go with the Brazilian fighting in Brazil. I'm going to look for the experience advantage, the high-level experience advantage, the grappling advantage that I think he has, and I'm going with Alexander Pantoja, the cannibal. I mean, who better to shave ass than an actual cannibal in Alexander Pantoja? 23-5 as a professional, fought, beaten, and lost to the much better brand of competition. Overall experience advantage, UFC experience advantage, submission grappling advantage, probably even a durability advantage, and he is a very good striker as well. Back-to-back 5-round wins over, elite flyweight fighters like Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval. So we're going with, I think, is a pretty safe pick this week, and that's going to be Alexander Pantoja to shave the ass of Steve Erceg. Let me take you through my capped bets for this card so far. I've got a 1-unit bet on Uncle Weezy's dog pick of the week here, William Gomis at plus 135. I have a 1-unit bet on Dione Barbosa at minus 191 on the money line. I've got a 2-leg parlay. It's Joanderson Brito to win, parlayed with the over 1.5 rounds in the Paul Craig versus Kyle Bahaio fight. That comes out to plus 150 for 1 unit. I have the fight goes to decision for Pichel versus Bonfim at plus 120 for 1 unit. And then I have the Alessandro Costa winning by submission at plus 550 for a 1/4 unit. I'm looking to add a couple bets, potentially an over 2.5 or a fight goes for Silva versus Klose, potentially a Kyle Bahaio by decision ticket, potentially a very small 1/4 of a unit fight goes to decision bet for Pereira, but that might just be a donation. But that's where we're at so far, you guys. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for watching. Please consider joining the Patreon where you can get access to these phenomenal probability stats. Check out Probability. That is the show that we're going to be doing for pay-per-view for Patreon for Dub Club members only going forward. Check out what kind of value we're providing in that show. And please consider joining the Patreon, supporting Brady and I for putting out this really innovative content, which nobody is doing right now at the moment. So thank you guys for watching. We will see you the next time. Let's stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC 301. And check me out tomorrow afternoon around 1 o'clock Central Time for your Uncle Weezy's greasy 4-leg parlay for UFC 301. We got Risky Weezy, real risky, says Robert Saladino. I disagree, man. We got now Lajuan saying, who's getting the Brazilian wax treatment? Pantoja, he likes it. And Erceg gives Pantoja his first KO loss, says Zach Johnson. Ground and pound. We got Lajuan saying, catch y'all later. Paul saying, Pantoja hasn't lost in like 4 years, never been finished, never even shows pain. We'll be fighting at home and the crowd going to be chanting, you're going to die at Erceg. Yeah, and I think our bets on Pantoja are going to cash. Everyone KO's Chanel, settle down with that Erceg by KO talk. I'm with you, man. But thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys tomorrow, 1 o'clock Central Time for the greasy 4-leg parlay for this event. Enjoy watching the fights, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.